Hello, everybody. I hope everyone is having a great weekend so far. And this Sunday, we're going to be having an interesting conversation. I've discussed it before, but it wasn't as in depth as this one is going to be. So I hope you enjoy this. It's going to be talking about there's more to it, the story behind the Liberian flag, the meaning behind the Liberian flag, where the ideas come from. So we're going to dive into that. Before I begin, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you sign up to the website at bailoafricstan.org/register and become and get involved. We would really appreciate it. So, going to give about 2 or 3 minutes to let everybody come in, everybody to get settled, get prepared, and then I'm going to go into the history behind the Liberian flag, what the Liberian flag symbolizes, the design, and why the Liberian flag is so significant, and how, we can carry its legacy and honor it. All right, y'all. It has been about 2 minutes, so we're gonna get started. The story behind the Liberian flag. I know more people will come in to chime in, give their thoughts, give their opinion, but we're really gonna talk about the Liberian flag. So, the Liberian flag is one of the oldest flags in Africa. It came about on August 24th, 1847, which is why August 24th is known as Flag Day in Liberia. This is when the Liberian flag was first hoisted. Now, the Liberian flag is red, white, and blue. It has a blue canton with a white star in it, and you have 11 alternating stripes, red and white. So, all of those 11 stripes are the signers of the Liberian Declaration of Independence. So, people like Hillary Teague, Elijah Johnson, Amos Herring, John P. Gripon, Beverly R. Wilson, Ephraim Titler, and the likes of those are all represented on that alternating red and white stripes. The blue canton represents the continent of Africa, and the white star represents that Liberia is the first republic on the continent of Africa. And that is correct. Liberia became an independent country in 1847, July 26, 1847. So it's been 176 years since Liberia has gained its independence, and we're approaching 177 next year in 2024. So the Liberian flag was designed by a committee, and these committee comprised of 7 women. And these were women who were very intelligent. They were married to well-off men, and they were given the task to design the Liberian flag. Now, this is a source from the African Repository discussing about the need for a Liberian flag. And you can get this. It says, Wellington, Georgia, May 27, 1847. Reverend and dear sir, Dispatches from Liberia, as published in the May number of the African Repository, detail the apparent unwillingness or indifference of the good citizens generally regarding the independence of that colony. After reflections on the subject, I am led to look on that measure proposed by the Society as somewhat precipitant and impolitic, in as much as a wiser forecast would indicate quite another rule as more auspicious to the rising welfare of the colored race. And that would be that the government of the United States should take the colony under its protection and gradually aid to form her into a respectable republic. I am aware that for the want of this variegated protection, and because of the exposed situation of the people without a sovereignty and the inadequacy of the colonization society towards furnishing them with a national flag which should command the respectable attention of other powers, the matter has been thought of, but yet in its infancy and with no vigor. Efforts have been made to enlist this government in the favor. Liberia and its citizens should not be too early abandoned to themselves, and it is a last resource should no other means avail, and that helpless community, hopeless of national fosterment from elsewhere, should proclaim their identity by the Code of Nations and assert their claims to nationality. So this is from the African Repository. There's a lot more to it. But basically, there they have things like, Liberia is not sovereign. Yeah, the colonization society is basically feckless. It's not working. And that they need to have a national flag. Now, there's more to it. They're advocating Liberia be under the protection of the United States, although of course, the Liberians themselves do not want to do that, and that's why they're going to declare their independence. They're going to have a constitutional convention, and that's how they're going to emerge on July 26, 1847. And after Liberia gained its independence, there's just going to be need for the national flag, and that's what the women were doing, and they were tasked with that from Joseph Jenkins Roberts. But I just wanted to give the background of what was leading up prior to that. July 26, 1847, and then August 24th, 1847, when the Liberian flag was going up. So it was basically dealing with Liberian status and not having a national flag, sovereignty. That's why I really wanted to talk about that from the African Repository. That was from May 27th, 1847. So we get to July 26, 1847, they signed the Declaration of Independence. And so Joseph Jenkins Roberts gives Susanna Lewis, who was the head of the committee, to design the Liberian flag. Now, it was Susanna Lewis, it was Mariel Hunter, it was Sarah McGill, because people refer to her as Miss J.B. Russworm, even though Miss J.B. Russworm is the wife of John Brown Russworm, which was Sarah McGill. So that would be, Sarah McGill would be the correct name to refer. You have Sarah Draper, you have Rachel Johnson, you have Conalette Teague, and then you have Matilda Spencer, who are the women who designed the flag. And even then, that's kind of iffy, because if we look at this from the Independent Republic of Liberia in 1847, which is important, again, it's important that we get primary sources. Give me 1 second. So if we look at the primary sources from the Independent Republic of Liberia, and this is so actually, if you look right here in the Independent Republic of Liberia, that's 1847, you can see right here where it says at 9 o'clock a.m., the governor, that's President Roberts, with the commissioned and non-commissioned officers of the 1st Regiment assembled at the courthouse. And at the same hour, Captain McGill's company of the light infantry and Captain Barber's state fencibles formed in Broad Street. By this time, the people were pouring from all quarters in the direction of the government square, and the government house and piazzas were already crowded to overflowing with ladies. At 11, the companies escorted the governor and other officers marched up and formed a line in front of the government house. And soon afterwards, a message was sent to the ladies that His Excellency was ready to receive them. The committee appointed by the ladies to represent them, occasions of Miss Susanna Lewis, Mariel Hunter, Richard Johnson, Miss Hazel, Miss F.M.T., Miss C. Ellis, and Miss W. N. Yates descended bearing the flag and advanced towards the governor, who met them a few paces in the front of the troops. As soon as the ladies appeared issuing from the door, the line presented arms. Mrs. Lewis presented the flag accompanied by the neat patriotic speech. Okay. So you see there, those are the women. Some of the women were the ones that designed it, and some of the women were the ones who carried the flag when it was hoisted up. Now, a lot of people will say, "Well, it looks like the American flag," and partially it does. It looks very similar to the United States, but it has a different meaning, and we have to understand context. Context is very important. It is very important when it comes to when we look at a flag and we understand the meaning of a flag. We have to first understand that. The Liberian flag means something entirely different compared to the American flag. When those ladies designed the flag, again, Susanna Lewis, Marielle Hunter, Rachel Johnson, Matilda Spencer, Collinette Teague, Sarah McGill, they were designing that flag as this is going to be a bright new day, Liberia being the bright star of Africa. Liberia was going to be of courage and moral excellence, which is what the red and white mean, that we are the sole republic on the continent of Africa. That's what they were designing that flag for. They were designing that flag to show that this was now a nation to be respected in the world. They designed this flag to demonstrate that Black people can govern themselves, that Black people are to be respected, Black people can do a system of government just as well and as efficient as anyone else. And again, they said in that Independent Republic of Liberia that Susanna Lewis did a patriotic speech. And you had these women who carried the flag. It shows the role that women play in similar in other countries and how they forfeited the national identity. So you have the Liberian flag, and when the Liberian flag is hoisted, people are celebrating. They're celebrating, they're dancing, they're having drinks, they're partying, and that's noted in the National Magazine in 1855. So it's talking about with President Roberts. And they were talking about how when the flag was there, right here, for President Roberts, here it is. So right here it says, at 11 o'clock, the governor received from a committee of ladies the new and national flag of the Republic of Liberia in presence of a large crowd of citizens. At 12, it was hoisted to the top of the staff on the most elevated part of Monrovia, beautifully floating to the free winds of heaven, and amidst a salute of 21 guns. This banner is made of silk. Upon one side, it is a blue field, and over a star is the national motto. The love of liberty under it brought us here. On the other side is inscribed the Republic of Liberia. The salute over, the governor, troops, and citizens proceeded to the Methodist Church where suitable religious services were performed. The Reverend James Spriggs Payne, that's what it is, J.S. Payne, of that denomination, delivered the eloquent address. In the evening, large parties assembled at the new mansion of Governor Roberts, where many patriots. Toasts were given, but be it remembered they were drunk in the very best and purest water which Monrovia affords. Were from eyewitness. Okay, so they were not necessarily drinking, but they were celebrating, to say the least. We can argue to say the least. That's what the Liberian flag was for. So that's just a brief background of the Liberian flag. So the Liberian flag again was established on August 24th, 1847. That's when it was first hoisted up. It was led by a committee of women led by Susanna Lewis. Again, you had Mary L. Hunter, you had Rachel Johnson, you had Collinette Teague, you had Sarah McGill, you had Matilda Spencer, who all got together to design the flag. That was the committee that was appointed by Joseph Jenkins Roberts. When the flag was first appointed, a lot of these women came out. They were celebrating. They had the flag. They had the red, white, and blue. They had the canton. They had the star, which represents the First Republic in Africa, and they were saluting. There were ceremonies, and people were celebrating, and people were just having a time of their life. And that is something that I think we can replicate going forward, having that sort of same reverence for the Liberian flag, especially as African Americans, as Liberians, whether or not you're in mono, whether or not you are Don and you're in Grand Jita and in Nimba and in Lofa, and whether or not you're in Bomi, the Liberian flag is something that really encompasses what Liberia stands for, what the people stand for, what we're about. So that is the importance of the Liberian flag, and I don't want people to get hung up so much on it looks like the American flag, because again, you have tons of countries where the flag looks very similar, such as Niger and India, Ireland and Cote d'Ivoire. Malaysia also has a similar flag to the United States. Chad and Romania have similar flags, but they all have different meanings. And the Liberian flag has a different meaning than the American flag. The American flag for African Americans represents oppression. It represents racism, slavery, expansionism, manifest destiny. The Liberian flag doesn't have that meaning. We need to understand that. That red, white, and blue does not have the same meaning. It has more excellence. It has courage. It has us being first, us being the giants, us being the leaders. And that is what a lot of people respected. People like Sekou Touré, people like Kwame Nkrumah, people like Nnamdi Azikiwe, people like in Togo and in Mali and in these countries, in Nigeria, again with Nnamdi Azikiwe, but more than that, especially when Edward Wilmot Blyden went to Nigeria, and Nigeria was a foment of a lot of Pan-Africanism. That is what that Liberian flag comes to symbolize. It symbolizes these women who collectively came together and did this. It wasn't just Susanna Lewis by herself. She had to have a collaboration with all of these women that designed it, and that took some time. And again, it was made from silk. They took time on this. They put in the time, and they put again the motto: the love of liberty brought us here. Liberia itself means liberty, and that's what that flag means. It means liberty. It means the 12 people who made it possible. So when people look at the Liberian flag, we need to have a new perspective. We need to have a new lens. We need to have a new understanding of what that flag really means. I understand people like to make parallels and they like to project, but we have to be really careful when we project and we make parallels. Just because a flag looks the same or looks fairly similar does not mean they have the same meaning. They come from the same context. Michael, that is the correct approach. Again, looking at it from a different outlook and not projecting or doing the parallels with the United States. We can also argue that a flag is not based on America's, but based on the family of flags known as the Stars and Stripes. This design represents democracy and liberty. And then he says the original flag was made from silk. Another brother said, peace family, peace brother, thank you for tuning in. And of course, peace fam right here. Glad you are listening. You're going to get a lot of information. And I just really wanted to go further because I did make a video about this last year, but it was very brief. It really didn't go to the level that this was going into, where we're showing how it came to be, when it was first hoisted, the reactions, the different sources that give this account. So that's what we're doing right now. And when we look at, you know, the women again who decided, you had Sarah McGill, who was married to John, who it says Miss J.B. Rushburn, but I say Sarah McGill because he was wife of John Brown Rushburn. So then in that case, John Brown Rushburn had a major influence, especially around the Cape Palmas area. You had Miss Sarah Draper, who was the first woman in terms of land ownership in the Republic of Liberia. You have Susanna Lewis, who's married to John and Lewis, who was one of the signers of the Liberian Declaration of Independence. Jean, I think it's Nasalau Lewis is his name. That was with Susanna Lewis. And by the way, Susanna Lewis' original name is Susanna Waring. She was the sister of Jane Waring, who ended up becoming First Lady of the Republic of Liberia, with Joseph Jacobs Roberts being married to her. And then you had Harriet Waring, who later became Harriet Brander, who married Nathan L. Brander. So those ladies came from a family that was very affluent, very powerful, and had a lot of success. I know Marielle Hunter came from South Carolina. I know that Collinette T is the sister of Hillary T, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And Hillary T wrote the Declaration of Independence. He also wrote the Constitution. So there's that. Rachel Johnson, closely related to Elijah Johnson. So these women were not just women that just was like, hey, just out nobody out of the blue. They just happened to just do the flag. These women were creme de la creme. They were women who were highly respected in the community. They were women who left their mark in Liberian politics, in the Liberian community, in the society at large. And these women would continue their duties after it became a republic, whether or not it was first lady, whether or not it was being married to the vice president. These women would continue to help lead Liberia in tremendous ways. So we're approaching 25 minutes. I don't want to go too long. Any questions? Any questions? Any comments? Because again, I know people are going to say it looks like the American flag. I know it looks like the American flag, but I'm still repping the Liberian flag. It has a lot of meaning. It has a lot of importance. It has a lot of value. I'm going to always rep the Liberian flag. Always rep the Liberian flag. And that's important for us to understand. So it's one of those things that we just have to appreciate. Again, any questions, any comments? We're taking your comments. So I'm going to spend 2 to 3 minutes getting your comments and any questions you have, because I know there's got to be some questions. We do have some more people coming in, so I'll also be waiting on them for when they come in. We do have more people coming in, so we'll just have to wait. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, yeah, this was one that we had planned, so I wanted to do that. I wanted to dive into that and really get to it. And again, we need to know this. So that's why it's important. We need to know it. Again, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Is there any info on Susanna Lewis's patriotic speech upon finishing the flag? Based on the primary sources, I haven't seen any. There's not too much information on a lot of Liberian women. I have noticed that. I mean, they do give some information. They do give some information, but they really don't go in depth on Susanna Lewis. All they say is they give a patriotic speech. They don't. We don't know what was really said. We don't know the overall message that she was trying to get to. All we know is she just gave a patriotic speech. I will look for that. I will look more to see if there's more info on her speech. But right now, we don't have too much information on her speech, which is unfortunate because I know she probably said a lot of amazing things. There's my brother. There's my brother. Yeah, so we went 25. Yep. So we had the background of the Liberian flag. I know we got more people coming in about 10, 20 minutes. So we'll be able to hopefully get their insight on it. The giant, as we like to call the person who's the master of this. Um, you said, is there any discourse had locally about the flag? Um, if we're talking about in terms of today, no. There's not too much influence to discussion about locally. It's just the Liberian flag, and just rep it. Is what's really in Liberia today. Now, if you're talking about historically, there were conversations about what the flag should look like, and the women came to the conclusion that that flag was the best one. So it really depends on what we're talking about. We're talking about today, or we're talking about in the past. But you know, the Liberian flag is what we have right now, and if people want to change it, we can have that conversation, later on down the line if you want to change the flag. Because I know some people, again, because people are the appearance is the reminder of America, and it disturbs their spirit, that they want the flag to be changed. So, but again, we can have
But
that conversation in the future.
isn't that the reason why we're doing this live stream? Because the
Yes, yes, and my gist and my point was the flag, even though the flag looks similar, the story behind it, the meaning behind it is different, and you can't really project the parallels of America with the Liberian flag, and we need to understand that. That's why I was spending really the last 25 minutes really harping in on, who designed the flag, their backgrounds, who they were, the reaction from the African American immigrants who captured Africans there, in different news articles and journals, to really illustrate that the Liberian flag has a different meaning than the American flag, and not to put the Betsy Ross, red, white, and blue, meaning the imperialism, the slavery, the manifest destiny, the eugenics that comes with the American flag. Um, just we just need to look at it with new eyes. Um, Again, this is the background information that I know. I know again, there's more people who have further background on this information that gonna come on later on. But yeah, just understanding the background, who these people were, and what they did is really the first step in sort of breaking down why, in my opinion, the Liberian flag doesn't need to change. But again, some people are going to be so focused on the aesthetics that it's going to change. Like they feel like it's going to change or it needs to change.
Yeah, this has always been like a low on the pecking order issue for me. You
It
know,
it, it's
like
always been.
it seems like people are really passionate about the colors on the flag more so than the actual nation itself. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like for me, I'd rather have concentrate on getting the nation together and getting the government in order and getting things like that rather than the colors of the flag. But that's why I was really interested in this because um, the colors aren't exactly what we think. Like everybody thinks that it's an imitation of America, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. There's a reason why. And again, they signed meanings to these colors. It wasn't just okay. We just want to be like America.
Right,
Have that mindset is very white supremacist and very dehumanizing. Because essentially, what you're saying is these black folks did not have a mind of their own. They didn't know better. They didn't understand how to think for themselves, that they had no creativity. And that's not factually right about these people. So that is very, very important that we get of really just stop emulating they look like America, or they emulated white America because they were brainwashed and they didn't know better. That's not true. Michael McGarry said that the Shield Commission was created by Torah in the 1970s to see if some changes should be made to the national flag. They denied it. They decided not to change the flag even then. I mean, think about it even from the lens of Samuel Doe. Samuel Doe cooed William Tolbert, and he ended up, completely, destroying the economy and ruining the government. But even he didn't change the flag. Like you changed the Constitution, you changed everything else, but you didn't change the flag. I wonder why you didn't change the flag. I mean, again, he could have went with red, black, and yellow. He could have went with similar colors to Ivory Coast and Sierra Leone, having like maybe red, white, yeah, red, just regular red, white, and blue, just alternate, have red, white, blue, similar to how the Netherlands color is. But he chose to keep the flag exactly the way that it was. He kept the motto exactly the same as it was. So again, that shows Liberian flag has its own significance and its own meaning.
hmm
Um, One person suggests, is it better than that the Liberian flag with a Christian cross instead of a star in the blue field? No. I think the reason why it's not better, and it's really great that they got the cross off of it and have the star, is because when you have a cross, it's gonna feed into and imply that Liberia is a Christian nation. That cross, of course, cross is a symbol of Christianity. So that's really the thing that I would say is that if you ask me, no, the cross should have been removed because that would have
It
been
was
Christian theology or the Christian state, Christian nation ruled on over.
that was a thing.
Yeah, the Liberian flag before it had the star under the ACS, it was just red, white, and blue with a cross on it. Yeah,
Mm.
it was like McGarry said, it was a placeholder for the Commonwealth period. So the Liberian flag looked like this in the 1830s during the Commonwealth for ACS. Um, this is fairly accurate. This. Give me 1 second. There we go. It would look like this.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, that's why it's a problem. That's a massive
Was
problem.
that was the first iteration?
No, that was just a flag under ACS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's why because that it would just imply um
No separation of church and state there.
mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah, he said they had to change the older flag upon independence. Yep. He said upon a time Monrovia's name was going to be Christopolis.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, the city of Christ. We've heard. Yep, I've heard that story before. Yeah, so you can see again the really ultra religious Christian fundamentalism that was present at that time. And again, we have to look at context. Again, context is always important. At that time, people were deeply Christian. This was the Victorian era. This was during the Second Great Awakening. Evangelicalism is running wild. So people are wanting to spread the gospel as far as they can spread it in everything that they're doing. So we just have to be understanding of that. Is that the flag of the Liberian Commonwealth? Yes, it is. That is the flag of the Commonwealth. So the flag with the cross on it was the flag of the Commonwealth. In 1847, that flag ceases to exist, and the star is the only one that is the legitimate flag of Liberia.
Hmm.
Not the one with the cross. But we have seen Liberians. We have seen Liberians with the cross on it. We have seen this before. Um, so here's a prime example of it. We have seen Liberians post pictures with the Liberian flag with the cross on it.
Hmm.
And again, that's problematic. Um, it's rude. Yeah, it's rooted in the Commonwealth. Deeply
That's
problematic.
one word for it.
Deeply problematic. But hey, that's the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth no longer exists, so we don't have to worry about it. Moja, how are you doing?
Hey guys, how you guys doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was so when y'all talking about the flag earlier, right before Big Brother Hollip came on. I was driving to a destination and it hit me. It was like you had said something, Jay, and I was like, you know what? Like prior to like conversations about the Liberian flag, I don't think I've ever like cared about a flag, and that's because I've been like obviously I remember like it was even worse when I was in elementary about like making sure you doing the Pledge of Allegiance and all that stuff, learning the 50 all of the capitals of the states, and trying to make you a real proud American, all of the little America the Beautiful songs and stuff. But I never really felt like some kind of pride or ownership of the flag, like ever. You know what I mean? And then now, the adult, all the Kaepernick stuff and all that other stuff, like that, like didn't really bother me. I'm like, all right, I don't care about that damn flag anyway. Like, I didn't need Kaepernick to like remind me of that. Then we get to the Liberian flag and we talking about Liberia and everything, right? And now I'm looking at it. So the only reference that I had was the American flag. So only thing like other flags, like when you talk about the Kenyan flag, the Nigerian flag, right? The South African flag, I recognize those just so I could recognize the country. because there's so many like African countries, right? And then like, the one that the Russian one with the star because it was so famous, shit like that. But in terms of like having pride over a flag, like never. So then when we get to the Liberian flag and it's like, all right, here's the one though. And it's like, damn, that look like the Puerto Rican flag. God damn, that remind me of the American flag, right? I'm just talking about me, like my frame of reference. That's where my
Mm-hmm.
mind goes. But in terms of like it being a big deal, like I don't give a shit. Like big bro, when you first came on and you was like, it's amazing how people will be passionate about like this object or this symbol, which is an important object and piece of symbolism. But then when it comes to the like, well, what about what's going on the ground? What about the politics of the area? What about the what's going on with the like with poverty? How are we feeding the people? It's like we don't want to talk about that at all. But we'll go ham about the flag, right? But yeah, I would just want to give like my frame of reference kind of like how I never really felt anything about any flag in general, personally. And then when it's like, all right, well, it is time to invest in one, it's like, man, this one remind me of something else. That the only like kind of symbol that I've been known to supposed to like, which don't have any feelings for. That makes sense. Just wanted to kind of
Yeah,
say that.
yeah, yeah,
Good
definitely.
to see
Like
y'all. Yeah.
I think that this is the reason why I want to find out more about the symbolism behind the colors and everything, because if if it could be shown that that's belongs to us and that the whole reason for it is based on our culture, then I think that that would make a difference. Because, like, if you're ignorant and you don't know anything, you just see it, you would think, oh, that's the American flag, that's the Puerto Rican flag. You know what I'm saying? Because those are the colors that you're used to.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying. Like my like frame of reference, that's all I had. So like, you know what I mean? Like nothing else
Hmm.
told me different. It don't look like it don't look like the Congolese flag where like you gotta look and be like, it don't look like that. Or like the Kenyan flag where you gotta look and be like, that's interesting. It just looks like
Hmm.
yeah, the regular flag.
But yeah, even when we look at the Kenyan flag, it's like the Kenyan flag is just really just the red, black, and green flag. It's like similar to the Malawi flag. It's very similar. It just has a particular
Yeah, that
symbol.
little beetle or something, whatever that symbol is, right?
Yeah.
Yo, Yamoja, can we see you? Or you not
Busy.
able to be seen? Okay, I got you. I'm trying
Nah,
to.
I was just in the
I'm
bathroom,
trying.
big bro. I was in the bathroom.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm trying to let us be seen from now on.
yes. So McGarry said the question of changing the flag is for us as Liberians to decide and not for outsiders to speculate on. If you're not Liberian, shut up. I'd rather have a power base. And that's really what it
Yeah.
comes down to. It comes down to what does it mean to us. And that's why I really wanted to originally get on the background of it. Because again, the Liberian flag has a different meaning than the American flag. I mean, it may look similar, but again, I bring up the point. Romania's flag and Chad's flag are exactly the same, except the shade of the blue is different. Ireland and Ivory Coast have the exact same flag colors. India and Niger have the same flag colors. The U.S. and Malaysia have the same colors. It's the background behind that flag, what the symbolism of that flag means, the context in which it was created. And so when you create this flag, when you're becoming an independent country, when people are basically saying, as I brought up earlier with the African Repository on May 27, 1847, that was about 2 months before the July 26, 1847 Declaration of Independence and signing of the Declaration of Independence. They're talking about, hey, this territory, is not really governed by the American Colonization Society, the ACS. The ACS is relatively feckless, it's useless. They have no national flag. They need to have a national flag. They need to have a government. And he's like saying, at the time, in that case, they're basically saying, hey, America needs to come in, but the Liberians themselves are not supportive of that. And so that's why they declare their independence. That's why they have the Constitutional Convention a month later. That's why they have, after they sign the Declaration of Independence, they have the committee led by 7 women, led by Susanna Lewis and Mary L. Hunter and Sarah Draper and Sarah McGill and Rachel Johnson, Colin Teagan. That's why they were giving the ceremony, because it has its own meaning. It has the meaning of being Africa's first republic. We are that bright star on the continent of Africa. You have that big blue canton, and then you have that star. You have the continent of Africa, and you have us being the shining light in Liberia. And even if people said, okay, it looks like the American flag, okay, you had African leaders who looked at the Liberian flag as inspiration. You have leaders like the Sekou Touré's, like the leaders in Sierra Leone, like the leaders in South Africa, who are looking to Liberia and referring to the Lone Star and that star representing Africa during the time of colonialism, as I said, when we were a benighted people. So just that alone shows the Liberian flag is not the American flag. It should not be put in the same equivalencies as the American flag. Michael McGarry said Haiti has changed the flag multiple times. Also, most modern republics in the 19th century had blue on their flags. Those other African flags are beautiful, but they're very recent. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those flags of red, green, and yellow, and red, black, and green came as a result of Ethiopia defeating Italy in the Battle of Adwa in 1896. So that was about 50 years after Liberia declared its independence, 49 to be exact. And then you have Marcus Garvey, who comes up with the flag in 1920. So we're talking about that being about close to 73 years after Liberia gains its independence. And I had this conversation with a brother, and I said, people don't look at the Haitian flag and say that the Haitian flag is a colonial construct, even though the only difference between the Haitian flag and the French flag when Haiti was originally established was they removed the white from it, signaling their white colonizers being defeated. But the scheme colors originally, if you look at the first Haitian flag, is very similar to the French flag. But we understand why, because the context in which Haiti was created is different. Haiti was born out of revolution. Haiti was born out of anti-slavery. And we recognize that. And that's why we don't say they emulated after the French or it looks like the French. We understand the Haitian Revolution and what led up to it and the aftermath and the inspiration that people got from Haiti. So again, it's important that you understand the context in which a flag is created and not just, oh, it looks similar. The history and the background behind it is the first and foremost, the most important thing. It is the most important thing.
I just realized it's going to be very hard to continue this live if Carl is not here.
No. I mean, I can keep it going. Yeah, it's like I can keep it going, but I mean, yeah, she's the sister who really is the one that has the dynamite on this, especially on the West African. I can give you the Black American, the historical, and the Liberian context, but if you want like the Poro and Sunday and the Liberian context behind it, that's the expert in Paul coming in for that, and she can go into that even more. I can just give the basis and just give this analysis for right now. Liberia was the beacon of Black American civilization among the hill. It was, and again, people always look to the Lone Star as an example of Black liberation, of self-determination. That's what it was. Oh, hey, Lanero. It's great to see you, hear back from you. I know it's been a while. We're starting to get more into it, but yeah, we're glad to hear you, and I hope you're enjoying this live. I hope you're getting valuable information about the flag, about the people who made it, the context when it was created, when, and the significance of it, and how we can really use that to build forward. But even if she doesn't come, we were able to continue this for a good hour, and then we can just do a part 2 specifically diving into the Koro, the Sande, and just West African culture in general with Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast. So not all is lost in this live. Not a lot. Actually, a lot was actually gained from it, I would say. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much what I have for the live. And again, I really appreciate y'all having that conversation, having the discussion, asking us questions, giving your thoughts and opinions about it. That's really appreciated. If there's not more questions, because again, this has been going on 15 minutes, and if she does not come on, we can do a part two. We can, we can end here. We can um, continue this another time, and yeah. So again, the Liberian flag has a lot of meaning. It has a lot of significance. We need to respect these people as human beings and not just mimicking creatures that didn't have a brain of their own and dehumanizing them. These people knew what they were doing. They knew they wanted this flag. The historical context set up for why the Liberian flag looks the way it does, why Liberia acts the way it does, its national anthem, all that is set by the Liberian flag. So
Did you touch on that? Yeah, did y'all touch on that? I remember Holland saying that he was getting more interested into like color and the symbolism and the like meaning of different colors and stuff. Did you touch on that? Cause I swear
yes,
you like
I did.
actually
I
know
did touch
about
on
what
it.
the
So
colors
I did
mean.
touch on it earlier. I did touch on it earlier with the
Okay, you don't
blue
got to go over it again if you don't want
and
to.
the
My
alternating
bad.
stripe. The 11th representing the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Hillary T, Amos Herring, Ephraim Titler, John N. Lewis, Samuel Benedict, John Day. Then you have the red and white. Of course, they both represent moral courage and excellence. Um, so I did go into that. So. Um, He says,
Yeah, cool, cool.
off
That's
topic,
definitely
how different would Liberia be had Lincoln sent all the black people there after the Civil War? Allegedly, he planned to send all the freedmen to Hispaniola or Liberia. My honest take on that is, I think if Lincoln sent Black Americans to Liberia, I think we would have been better off. I know that people are going to say that's a controversial opinion, but to me, I think that's true. We would be better off. We would have been able to fully establish ourselves. And most importantly, we wouldn't have had to dealt with the lynchings, the Jim Crow, the segregation. And that's what we really have to analyze. That's one thing I said was my mistake was they should have sent us back to Africa. A lot of black people were only 2 to 3 generations removed from Africa. Some of them were born on the continent when they came in 1860, such as those with the Clotilda and those who came in after 1808. So if you ask me, yeah, we should have been sent back to Africa. And there's nothing wrong with
Can I
saying that. We would have been
can
better
I
off.
say something to that
Go ahead.
to that effect, Jay? Like it's even more evident because during that time, black people still and literally built America. It was black people still doing all the work, black people still making all the inventions. So we would have just been doing that. Guess what? In Africa, it's not like America was this like super industrialized place. Like no, black people still built up America during that time. Just to be clear on that.
Yeah. And just it was that, but also, black people at this time, the world was different in 1860. The scramble of Africa had not yet happened. So remember, if we come in 1865 and we leave Liberia by 1880 before the Berlin Conference, we're maybe able to stop a lot of European powers from advancing further, which is why in Delaney, the British were so against them establishing an African American settlement in Nigeria because they feared that that was going to happen. So we can look at it from that lens too. We wouldn't have had to dealt with Jim Crow, slavery, redlining, eugenics, the Tuskegee experiment, putting us in gas chambers, as showed by the book "The Rise and Fall of the American Gas Chamber." But also, I think we would have been able to blunt and stop a lot of Africa from being colonized by France and Britain and Germany and Belgium. So yeah, it's a tragedy that we were not able to go back all of us to the continent of Africa, and we're still suffering the consequences of us not doing it. Lanero says, "What is the plan for 2024 as we welcome in the new government?" There's a lot. We're just continuing what we're doing. He's definitely gonna keep the status quo. We actually had a live about this 2 weeks ago, Lanero, about Joseph Bokai. So if you want to, you can go watch that video, and we can really break it in on YouTube about what a Bokai presidency would mean. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be the status quo. He's going to keep things in order, and that gives us a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, we covered that. What you said 2 weeks ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I would definitely check out that live because we dig a lot into what we expect this new administration to be.
Liberia would be much bigger. The Gambia to the Niger River Delta. Yeah, I think if Liberia, if African Americans came back to Africa, I think Liberia would have been like literally all of West Africa. I think possibly we would have gone as far as Congo, the Congo Basin in terms of overall size. I think we would have been a force to be reckoned with. Because remember, the 1860s was considered the golden era of Liberia. So you have what's called the golden era of Liberia in the 1860s, 1870s, and you have African Americans that are flooding coming into the country. That's going to drastically influence the country. And also, because you have a massive influx of African Americans into the country, you now have a consumer base where you can industrialize. That was the one thing that was missing. Liberia had a lot of merchants. Liberia had a lot of resources, a lot of manpower. But in terms of the immigrants, they relied on the indigenous population. It wasn't like they could industrialize themselves. There was not you couldn't do factories because you didn't have that mass industrial base that you needed. I think if you had African Americans in the North, in the South, who were doing machinery, who were doing wooling and doing that, you would have seen Liberia industrialize a lot faster. And again, we would have been a force to be reckoned with. So, it's not too late for us to rebuild Liberia up. It's not too late.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yep. So with that, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you comment down below. Tell us what you think. Of course, we have our lounge for people who are members of the BL. Make sure to sign up for the BAIO, and then we'll allow you to become we'll allow you to join the lounge. And I'm going to answer this comment, and then we can head on out. All the markets were in Europe and America. That's how they starved Liberia after the scramble for Africa. Yep. And Liberia did not have markets it could sell to in West Africa too much. They didn't have a huge population or consumer base, so it made it extremely difficult for us to really do anything. That's why we lost a third of our territory. Oh, there it is. Oh, there is sister. She left her comment there. She said Liberia did begin to get industrial. They were sabotaged. Oh yeah, that part too. Yeah, I forgot about that part. That part was huge too. I was thinking more of the internal, but yeah, they were definitely sabotaged, which is why we lost a lot of our territory. About 30% of our territory. So yeah, the sabotage was very real. Hey, and to the brother of us going back to Africa, all of us linking and go back to Africa, that's part of sabotage because they had the means for us to go back to Africa, a little bit of it, but they didn't want to. So, there was a famous hearing where they said, I don't care about sending black people to Africa. I just don't want black people in our states. Black people in your state, but you don't want to send us back to Africa. So what do you do with the black people?
I'm so happy that I don't communicate or talk to white people about anything having to do with black issues.
It was hilarious. It was hilarious.
I, I saved myself a lot of frustration and irritation by doing that. It's like I really don't care. Like what I've
It's
been doing, you know what I've been doing lately?
it's the
Um,
contradiction. It's to me it's so you don't want us to go back to Africa, or you're complaining that African Americans are asking and demanding of you to go back to Africa. But at the same time, you're mad that black people are going in your lunch counters, going in your parks and swimming pools. It's like, which one do you want? Do you want black folks to be here or not? If you don't want us to be here, then let us go back to Africa. If not, be quiet.
it
But
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter like what they think or feel. That's why like what I've been doing lately is just like when somebody replies to like one of my videos, I'll just put thank you for the click and the view. That's it. Thank you for the click and the view and keep it moving. I don't have time. I'm not gonna go back and forth. I'm not your boyfriend.
That's hilarious. What is wrong with our folks? I am not your lover.
Exactly. I have no vested interest. I'm not
That
emotionally
is
attached to
funny.
you.
What's up, Sister Ka? Really appreciate you being on because yeah, we were. It was like I talked about the Liberian flag for about 30 minutes, 30, 40 minutes, and I was like, okay, I don't think how much longer I can keep it going because I pretty much expunged, the significance of the Liberian flag, what it means. I know I say Sister Ka is queen when it comes to this. So
I don't know what's going on with the background. I can't hear you very well. Hold up.
hold on, I
Hello?
got it.
I hear
Oh,
like
I'm
a
making
lot of
noise?
background. I can hardly
Yeah.
hear. Yeah, I can't really hear Jabari.
Oh wait, I'll put myself on mute.
Sorry.
You're
Sorry,
good. Yeah.
Basabari. I didn't hear what you were saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I said for about the last 45 minutes, I know the last 10, 20
Yo,
minutes we sort of like we're answering
I feel
questions.
blessed.
Um,
I feel so blessed.
but
Sorry. Bro.
we were talking about the Liberian flag, the story behind the Liberian flag. I talked about what the red, white, and blue meant, the canton, the star in Africa, with the white star, the canton being the continent of Africa, the alternating stripes with the founders, who Susanna Lewis was, being the wife of John N. Lewis, who was also the sister of Jane Waring, who was the first lady, Mary L. Hunter, Sarah Draper, Collinette Teague, Sister Hillary Teague, Rachel Johnson, Matilda Spencer, um, Sarah Draper being the first, I think, woman to have like land ownership in Liberia. So anything else you would want to add? Because I know you have a little bit more background on Liberia than I do.
I
So
mean,
I'm going.
right. So the symbolism and what it meant, at the time and what the conventional meaning is one thing, but the origin of the design for me is what is so fascinating because the alternating stripes of the flag that we consider to be the American flag and who actually designed the American flag is clouded in mystery, folklore, and myth, right? And anytime you have a situation like that where they make up these stories about a Betsy Ross, and this story didn't come out until long after Betsy Ross was dead. She didn't get credit when she was living because she didn't design the flag. So the question becomes, what is the history of the American flag in the first place? And who likely designed the US flag, and how did that evolve, that design, that alternating stripes? Why do we often see a person in stilts walking with the alternating stripes on their pants? And where does that symbolism come from? Much of that is rooted in the history and the culture of West Africa. And while we're still, conducting this research, these are symbols that are very ancient to West Africa, this alternating red and white stripes. You see it in many textiles that have been, that are being kept in museums, from the 1600s and long before the United States of America got independence, and long before it was even created as a colony. before the British even went and settled and established there. So before independence, this symbolism was very important to West Africa. So I'm constantly reminding people, don't this idea that, oh, the design was borrowed. Borrowed from whom? Who was likely to have put that together except for enslaved people? And where did they get the idea from? From their own people, from whence they have come, right? So you have to recognize this very important fact. The other thing I'm not sure if you mentioned, that is the oldest flag. That is the very first flag. Ethiopia didn't have a flag, right? It's a foreign thing to have a flag representing your country. That is the oldest flag in Africa. I mean, you had European nations flying flags, but that is the oldest African flag. The second oldest is the one for Wosolo Empire by Samori Toure, who also borrowed the Lone Star symbol for his flag for the Wosolo Empire of resistance against imperialism. So there's a lot for us to explore and talk about. I would love to have another discussion about some of the symbolism behind this and why it is very important for us to stop attributing everything that was ever created to Europeans. We realize that we have developed and created many concepts, and we are allowed to borrow from ourselves, even if they borrow from us first. Who's the source? The Liberian flag, the American flag have their roots in Africa. That symbolism has its roots in African culture, in our traditional societies. The country cloth that we weave on these ancient tools, solid color or alternating colors. This is what we've done for many, many centuries. If you look at the gowns that our forefathers wore, long before Columbus ever stumbled across the New World, these were symbols that we took to war. These are symbols that we wore on our clothing, and we need to understand that. Is all I'm trying to say. But I'm sure you did an awesome job with talking about the modern definitions of the flag. The ancient origins of the flag are African. Period. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about it, knowing what I know about the meaning of our textiles. So when you see these racists running around flying the U.S. flag, just know that's a country cloth design that they're flying over their heads. So, and even the American flag didn't even become a real symbol until a couple of decades after independence. They had designed it, but it wasn't something to rally people around originally. There were many proposals for the American flag, and each sect of Europeans wanted to bring their traditional secret society symbols into it, and they couldn't agree. They couldn't agree on how to design the flag. So what is a likely solution? You bring something that's completely not derived from Europe, in order to do that. You look at the symbols that they had come up with, they were completely different. So where else? You get one of the enslaved butlers who's maybe a master tailor to come up with a design that he pulled from his ancestors here. To solve this argument or this dispute, let's use something African. They won't want to admit it today. So they create all this folklore about Betsy Ross. But they know it's not true. If you just Google this, they will admit that they know that it's folklore and it's not true. So I think it's fascinating. We should probably get into it a little bit more. And then the other thing I wanted to say, I this idea that Liberia didn't industrialize because we didn't have enough people. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily too accurate, because you did have fabric manufacturing, you had shipbuilding, ship repair, you had a lot of things going on. Liberia was the first victim in the world of an organized global trade embargo. Then we didn't have people to trade with, is the world ganged up against us because they decided that they were going to colonize Africa. That's what happened. We didn't need more people to industrialize. We had people, we had the skill. It was just, the issue was sabotage. It wasn't lack of skill, it wasn't lack of manpower, it was pure economic sabotage on the part of the imperialist powers that had decided they were going to colonize Africa. You cannot have Africans as trade partners and still colonize them at the same time. So that was the issue. So, I mean, but even with all of that, I mean, you had Daniel Bashir Warner before he became president. He was shipbuilding, he was repairing ships, he was doing this on a mass scale. Ships used to come into the harbor, and he had a whole system of repairing and rebuilding vessels. That's well documented. You know, you had Thomas Holland that came from Rhode Island and opened up a manufacturing plant for cotton. They were making some of the best cotton cloth in the world, best quality, with homegrown cotton in Liberia. So this idea that we weren't manufacturing, I don't think is accurate. I think we had begun the process and would have gone far if it were not for the Berlin Conference and all the sabotage that happened after that.
Oh no, I agree with that. What I'm saying is the reason I brought up the manpower is if you had like, because we were, the question was what would happen if Lincoln had sent all the black people back to Africa, like let's say all like 4 million. They just said, like, listen, that was policy, and I said you would have had a much more larger base, so you would have a lot more manpower. So the speed at which you could do it, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, it's just a little problematic for me because what it makes it sound like is that the people who were there were not manpower enough. You had over 1 million people in the vicinity. You had E.J. Roy, who already recognized that the people there were human beings. They didn't have to come from America, right? So Roy wanted to build a railroad to the north. So it's not because of lack of manpower. You had King Momolu that controlled that entire region, over 500,000 people. That said, yes, bring the railroad here. We've got people. They were already cooperating and coordinating with people well into what is modern day Mali.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, because King Momoru had that whole trade network. So one of the things we have to do when we talk about Liberia is talk about Liberia. It can not only be the founders of the republic, but also the people within the republic. Mm-hmm. They had a massive network. Why would E.J. Roy want to build a railroad going well into what is modern day Guinea if he didn't have a connection, a network already established with people who have been trading for over 1,000 years? It's because they had sat with Momoru. Edward Wilmot Blyden, these people had sat with King Momoru. They had planned this out. It was sabotaged. Samori Toure drew his inspiration of resistance from Liberia. We forget that this was happening after Liberia was established. Liberia was a republic when Samori Toure decided to fight the French. Liberia was his ally. So yes, Lincoln sending people back or not, human beings were already there. Powerful people that were able to battle the French and keep them at bay. The only reason Samori Toure fell is because other Africans sabotaged him, not because the French army defeated him. They didn't. He was defeated by Africans who were fighting a proxy war against him on behalf of the French. So we're talking about very powerful people. We have to get this concept out of our minds that nobody was there or that the people that were there were not already extremely powerful. You're talking about Africans in the vicinity of the Republic of Liberia that had defeated one of the most powerful armies in the world. So we have to recognize that. And you're also talking about one of the most massive and most ancient trade networks in the world. These West Africans were not just, jungle bunnies, as people assume. So with or without mass migration, just the interjection of the people who did go back, that mixture and that interaction between the E.J. Roys and the Blydens with the kings in the rainforest and in the Sahel and the savannah, that interaction was powerful enough in and of itself. You didn't need a mass exodus. You already had labor force. You already had the Africans who understood the Western mindset. You had the Africans who had control and command over the workforce. They were already networking and working together. So the problem was sabotage. disunity and sabotage. Because again, you had this whole thing of, I mean, it's a long story. Maybe we can have another show about that specifically, because it's a very interesting topic that we don't really deal with, because we
Mm-hmm.
always assume that people have to come and do these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
someone else has to come and do it.
So Michael McGarry said the work of Benjamin Anderson was enough for the powers to see Liberia as an economic threat. Also, think of the early merchant princes of old Liberia and the rise of Arthington as an economic base.
Wait, say that again.
He said the work of Benjamin Anderson was enough for the powers to see Liberia as an economic threat. His journey into the interior. Also, think of the earlier merchant princes of old Liberia and the rise of Arthington as an economic base.
Right. And then even Benjamin Anderson was just the beginning, because after Anderson went, you have Blyden going. People forget that Blyden went and went with King Momoru and went to Bopuru and marched through the rainforest and had conversations. And then, I mean, I did a whole show on King Momoru of Bopuru, breaking all of this down, how powerful this man was. So this idea that there was a bunch of booga boogas in the rainforest and African Americans had to go open their minds to modernity is just crazy to me. What you had was the best and the brightest people from the United States, very educated Black freemen, luminaries, right? You had some of the most successful people among the African American population going to the continent, geniuses like E.J. Roy going to the African continent, overachievers like Thomas Howland going to the African continent. That pool of the elite minds of the African American community meeting up with some of the most powerful kings on the ground. That is what made Liberia dangerous. It wasn't a mass exodus that made it dangerous. It was that the best minds among the African American community went to Africa, and they were about it. They didn't go there, haphazardly. They had a plan. They understood. They went there with purpose. This wasn't some forced, Lincoln sent all the slaves back. To hell with Lincoln in some forced migration. These people went of their own volition with a plan, and their plan was correct. Their plan was right. They did everything they should have done. They were thinking way beyond how most of us even think today. Self-determinate men. Brilliant teachers. Look at the women that went back. They opened schools. They learned indigenous languages just so they could teach the children what they wanted them to know. And often in their own tongue. We don't talk about that. And then you're talking about King Momoru and these giants in the rainforest that were doing incredible things, had massive trade networks from places like Bopuru. They're trading all the way to the Gambia River, trading all the way to the Niger River, all the way to what is now Hausa land in Nigeria. That's how massive that trade network was. So people shouldn't be thinking that was some little isolated thing. E.J. Roy recognized this immediately. And it's because of the work of, as Michael correctly said, you have Benjamin Anderson going into the rainforest first, saying, my God, this thing we're doing on the coast is nothing. These people aren't trading the coast. They're trading across the savannah in massive caravans. The economic activity on the other side of the rainforest is greater than what we're doing on the coast. That's where all the gold is going. So this isn't about, putting stuff on boats. They had buyers, they had investors, they had resources. So that transboundary network has been going on for centuries. It's older than Liberia. It was just that Anderson discovered what was going on, because they had the indigenous leaders had a policy of non-penetration where they didn't want anyone going up there. Like, keep them little brothers down there on the coast. But it was King Momoru that said, no, we need each other. Y'all come on. This is what we're about. Let's work together. So
That's incredible. I did not know that those trade routes to that extent. I knew that they went to the interior and they went to like places like Guinea in maybe southern Mali. But I was like, wow, like all the way to Hausaland. That caught me off guard.
Of course they did. And if you even look at Samori Touré's story, how he even became who he was. I mean, this guy was going not only to Futa Jalon in northern Guinea, he was going all the way to Senegambia to study and to trade because that his father was a trader and he was a trader. And that's how he became who he was, traveling those vast distances. These caravans have been rolling in that era. The economic activity has always been in the savannah for West Africa. The coastal economic trade is more recent than it's more recent than the savannah and the trans-Sahara trade, much more ancient. So we have to remember that our interaction with Europeans is far more recent than our interaction with Asians and other Africans. We've been West Africa is not Papua New Guinea. It's not some isolated place. The gold coins that are minted in ancient Rome, right? West Africa was essentially the southern economic boundary for the ancient empires. It's always been part of the global trade network. That's why you had black generals in Rome. They were West Africans. That's how Mansa Musa and then became so powerful. So this is not Liberia. If you look at the map, Liberia is not some isolated place. Most of these people that are in that place we consider to be the mountainous rainforest and the savannah and all those areas, those people are from the ancient empires. They're not ignorant. They're not naive. They were not isolated populations. They were wise. They were powerful. The gold that used to fuel trade across the Sahara came from those regions. So we have to always keep that in mind. There's no isolation going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, thanks. We needed that. That just puts so much in perspective. Michael McGarry just continuing with his fiery commentary. Liberian coffee was big until the Arabica bean Alfred King presented at the World's Fair. We were bubbling.
That's right, Michael. That's absolutely right. And this is why I always say, we need to be aware of this really narrow story, the narrow narrative. There's a broader story that connects things on a massive scale. And when we realize how incredible that is, it will humble all of us and also inspire us, right? But I would encourage everyone to watch the episode on Liberian History Channel of King Mamoru Obokulu. That for me should solidify things. I think we keep thinking that there was nothingness. There's a reason that these brothers and sisters were able there was the cross pollination of culture, of African cultures, the Africans returning from being basically in the belly of the beast, being exposed to the European context of behavior and being able to communicate that to their brethren on the African continent was powerful. There's something to be said about people who go into enemy territory and return. They understand the enemy well. And that cross-pollination of intellect, of culture, it was a very courageous thing. It was a very courageous thing. It was a powerful thing. That's the reason Liberia still exists today. When you talk to the Freemasons in Liberia, they'll tell you that they used to hold sessions in the Mandingo language. Why is that? Because you had people like King Mamoru join their brotherhood. I'm sure. Why else would they be holding council in the Mandinka language? They have to. Liberians have to tell their own story. And some of the history that needs to be reconstructed. Some of these brothers up the hill need to tell the story. about the country. They need to make sure it gets out because they know a lot more than they they know a lot. Put the stories outside. Tell us what was going on. Tell us the history of the country. They know. It's not as simple as people think that, oh, they were having conflicts with the natives. That is not true. There is not a monolithic group of people in Liberia called natives. It's a fictitious thing. You have a very diverse population historically, culturally, and everything else. People are not all the same. So that's all I had to say, y'all. Love you guys. I just wanted to just put out these points because I think too often we talk without putting these points out. But I appreciate y'all and keep doing what you're doing, Jabari, and Holup and everybody else. Michael, you're the quest for knowledge and the quest to unbury our history is such a noble and important cause. And there's nothing more powerful that you can do beyond telling your own story and uncovering the lies.
I just want to get to Blue Sauce because Blue Sauce has been really trying to get this point. I just want to clarify. So no, J.J. Roberts was not for an ethno, was not like just Black American nation state. J.J. Roberts was more of, I want like the elite people to like immigrate, like the creme de la creme to immigrate. He was very opposed to just like run of the mill, average, poor, working class Black people immigrating.
Yeah, that's Roberts didn't want. Roberts believed that he was an intellectual elite. He believed in that kind of that, for lack of a better. I mean, he didn't use the terminology "talented tenth," but that was kind of who he was. He didn't want a bunch of plantation slaves going to Liberia. He didn't want a bunch of captured Africans going to Liberia. He wanted people with skills. He wanted people with skills that they could use to develop the society. I can't say I blame him. The United States does the same thing to this day. It's easier to immigrate to America if you are if you're a medical doctor than if you're a shoe shine boy.
Yep.
If you're a medical doctor, you don't have to climb under the fence in Mexico to come to America. You can just go and apply for an immigrant visa and they'll, oh, you're a doctor. Great. Come on in. Surgeon. Great. Right? Because they have immigration policies that are different for highly skilled people, highly educated people, very different. Corporations can send for you. Hospitals can send for you. Right? Universities can bring you into the United States if you're highly skilled. So that's what countries do. They want the best of the best of the best to come to their country. And Roberts wasn't wrong for that. That's common sense. Yep. Why would you want to bring a population of people that are going to be a burden when you're still trying to get off the ground?
Yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of them are illiterate. They only really know how to do cotton picking or let's say cotton production, which again, you have people already in West Africa that can do that. So you bring in a bunch of people that are cotton farmers. Okay, what do we do with these people? Because we already got people that can do that. So what do these people do?
And also, Jabari, not only that, but they were broken spirits. Let's be honest. You had people who were broken. Do you know what they did to people? So you had people with a lot of psychological problems, broken human beings. And they didn't have the resources to tend to all of that. People who would just, get into fights. It was horrible. Being liberated from a plantation where you've been abused since you were a child in mass numbers and being taken to the west coast of Africa, where you've spent your entire life being told when to wake up, when to go to sleep, and then being said, you're free now. We had the same problems here in the States after slavery was abolished. People didn't even know how to take care of themselves because of the way they had been broken emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It takes a lot. So Roberts had already seen what happens and wanted to focus more on skilled immigration. As cold and awful as that sounds, that was the mindset. And I can't say that I blame him. I mean, if you were starting a settlement right now, would you want to get students from Howard and Spelman and Morris Brown, or would you want to go into the gang communities and bring people over in mass? You know, you want to bring all the pimps and hoes over, you want to bring all the scholars over. It's just what it is. You know, and that sounds as bad as it sounds. That's the analogy.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna bring the sisters that's doing the booty shakes in front of their kids, or you gonna bring the sisters that can come and teach? You gonna bring the sisters that have skills, that are gonna open schools? We gonna get mad at Roberts for that? What would you do?
What do we always say? People with skills, people like mine, people with skills.
No, he might have been harsh about the way he said it, but it was the 1800s. People didn't, people said what they said. It was the 1800s.
Yep, that
He,
was. Mm-hmm.
so,
It's the
brother, I
truth.
hope that clears. Yeah, he clears it up. I'm not mad at him. He snuffed out the slave trade all up and down the West African coast. If we want to know J.J. Roberts for anything, he is the greatest abolitionist in history. He wasn't a philosophical abolitionist writing philosophy. He actually went and beat Negroes up and shut stuff down all up and down the West African coast. That's what Joseph Jenkins Roberts should be known for, even more than being the first president of Liberia. This brother prevented calamity for thousands, if not millions, of people. He shut down all those slave factories on the coast of what is now Ivory Coast, Liberia, and much of Sierra Leone. We owe him a lot of respect. Maybe I'd be born in Cuba if not for Joseph Jenkins Roberts. So it's not I mean, we like to focus on some of the small stuff and not realize like this is really his legacy. It's snuffing out the slave trade. Not just by writing a proclamation, but by actually doing it. He actually did it. He didn't just say, "Oh, the slave trade is now banned." No, he went and bust stuff up. So much of the towns along the Liberian coast are former slave factories that he busted up.
Yep, and it wasn't just, and yep, it was him, and it was his army. Which, again, based on the reading, it was both. Like, and that's the important thing to consider is that it was a collective effort. It was a collective effort to snuff out the slave trade. It wasn't just one person. It was a collective effort. Joseph Jenkins Roberts
It was
was
a
the
collective effort. Roberts led it. Roberts drove it. He was the
Yep.
leader. He was the fearless one. He was the one that was like, "Look, we going." He didn't send people. He was in front. He was personally there. Like, I give him all the credit because it wouldn't have happened. And yes, you can say, "Oh, Governor Buchanan supplied this," but Roberts was physically there. And yes, of course, everything's always collective. But
Yeah, I know Roberts was the head. Roberts was the head, but he was the one who was commanding the troops. But yeah, it was a collective effort. But yeah, Roberts was the head.
mm-hmm.
Oh, Michael McGarry. Yep, we're gonna ask because Blue Sox, you wanted to say something. So what was it you were going to say?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Ka about all these books I read about Liberia were a long time ago, and so it was a brother back in early Liberia when Liberia wasn't what it became. It was still kind of like there was JJR, there was Joseph Jenkins Roberts that wanted to promote like kind of like what Jabari was saying, the kind of like a W.B. Du Bois type of pro immigration type of thing. And then there was like another guy, I believe his name was Blyden. It's like Blydn, not like Biden that's in the White House right now. But
Right,
it was a
Blyden.
guy who's like Pan Africanist. He promoted like integrating the indigenous people, not necessarily focusing on the people from America coming over, but like building this
larger state that encompassed everybody over there. And I don't remember exactly what the arguments were, but I know he lost out to like a Joseph Jenkins Roberts type of, we're going to focus on people coming over from like the states in the Caribbean, instead of like, trying to compete with like the Staccato Empire and other people that were building states at that time. Do you know who that guy was? I didn't know. I think his last name was Blyden. I know it started with a B. I don't remember if that was the last name.
Edward Wilmot Blyden. So when Benjamin Joseph Knight Anderson. So this is one of the things I want to express with, so that in no uncertain terms, there has never been a leader in Liberian history that has risen to the level of a president that was not trying to integrate indigenous people into the country. That's a myth. The moment Lot Carey stepped foot at Cape Mesurado, he opened a school for indigenous children. So there's never been an apartheid segregation. It's never crossed anyone's mind. I see it in no speeches they wrote, in none of the letters that they wrote. So that's the first thing. Blyden was from the Caribbean. He was part of the legacy of bringing people to help to educate and integrate. Blyden was also a bit of a linguist. He was a religious leader. He was a philosopher. He was an educator. He was at one time president of the Liberia College. He was a cultural researcher. I'm not going to call him an anthropologist. He was a researcher, meaning that when he interacted with King Momoru, it was Blyden that also interpreted. He learned Arabic so that he could write and communicate with people outside, off, in the north, beyond the coast. It was Blyden, Edward Wilmot Blyden, who did much of this. And he didn't do it. He was part of Joseph Jenkins Roberts' party. So it wasn't like it's us against them. This was the entire plan all along. So let it be clear that there wasn't some group trying to integrate and some group trying to segregate. African Americans did not go to Africa thinking that they're going to be segregated from African people. I have seen that written absolutely nowhere. These were not illiterate people. They wrote their own stories. They wrote their own letters. They wrote their own speeches. They spoke. It's documented. And you don't have that sentiment. There was never a time when there's a school opened in on the coast, whether it be Maryland, Cape Mount, Mesurado, Bassa, where indigenous children did not attend schools with the children of the repatriates. We have never had that. We have all the statistics from the Christian schools, whether it be Methodist or Lutheran or Catholic or Episcopalian or AME, whatever it is. You see the rosters for those schools. They documented stuff. They had reports. You say so-and-so native children or this other person born of heathen parents. When they're heathen, it basically means they're indigenous. They weren't Christian. But you see all of the lists of the children. There was no segregation. And this is why a lot of the repatriated men were married to indigenous women, because they attended school together. You marry
to be honest,
the kids you go to school
then they
with.
had country wives.
What do you mean by country wise? What does that mean?
Like they had a America wife in Monrovia, and they had another wife that was indigenous in the country somewhere.
Who did that? And what time period are you talking about? Are you talking about the 1970s or are you talking about the 1800s?
No, I'm talking about earlier than that. I'm talking about like turn of the century.
I'm not aware of that kind of behavior happening until the mid 20th century.
The mid 20th century?
Yeah, okay. I'm not aware of that kind of behavior happening.
But my thing was, it was more that JJR had a concept for his vision of Liberia. Leiden had a concept of a vision for his vision of Liberia, and they were competing. And at some point, I don't know if it was a plurality of people agree with him or just the moneyed interest agreed with him. But JJR's vision is the one that took off, and that's the reason why people view Liberia the way they do today. And the reason, because Blyden, if his vision took off, then Liberia would probably stretch all the way to the Niger Delta. Like Liberia wouldn't have just been wherever black people from America settled at.
I think what you're saying doesn't match the records. The first thing is Blyden was a member of the establishment party, just like Joseph Jenkins Roberts. He wasn't a true way guy. He was against the true way party. So Blyden is from that old school like Roberts. The second thing is you couldn't have done anything after the Berlin Conference. Liberia couldn't stretch anywhere because of the Berlin Conference. It's not because of some disagreement in ideology. It's because Europe used their military unity and Africa's ethnic diversity to subdue Africans. That's what it is. You can't stretch into territory that Europeans are claiming. It's not possible. Samori
I don't
Toure
mean
tried and he
so.
was defeated.
especially if you don't
I
have the
don't mean
military.
so much as he was trying to push. Like I'm talking about pre-Berlin Conference, because I forgot how long the brother was, speaking and advocating. But before the Berlin Conference, I believe you even had did a I don't know, an episode or whatever on Focus on Liberia, where you talk about how the way the borders are drawn, there's people on both sides of the border that speak the same language. Like there's Capelle people in Guinea. There's I forgot what ethnic group, like the Vai and the Gola. Like there might be other ones on the other side of the border, Sierra Leone, when Melinda was taken from them. But my thing was just that there was brothers who were at like Liberia ended up being a state in which um it was really pro like as far as leadership it was not a state in which they let the indigenous, unless you were really coming up through the ranks and you knew people, they weren't letting indigenous people run
I,
Liberia or be in
I
positions of
mean blue
leadership in
socks.
Liberia.
I mean blue
The
socks.
So let
Blyden
Blue
was,
socks.
we don't need to limit this
so
to
Uh,
let me
our own group. We need to incorporate other groups,
let me
and
ask you
we could be
something.
bigger and span wider.
blue
Let me ask you something. What are you basing this on?
There had been a book I had read before that was kind of explaining how
Who wrote the book and
the
what is the
America
book
and
you're talking
Africa
about?
was in,
let me see, hold on a second.
because if it was that America and Africa story, that book is BS.
I mean, but that's not even the point,
America and
Jabari. I just want to
Africa.
know.
Yeah, it
It
might have been
doesn't.
America and Africa. I read some
So
Yeah,
I
other
just
books
want.
that really just told facts, but yeah, America and Africa.
So
The story of
here's what I want you
Liberia
to.
and the former slaves who ruled it. Yeah, but
yeah.
I think
Here's.
that's a white
I
guy,
knew it
right?
was
James
I knew it.
Clement.
I knew it.
So let me say
Yeah,
something. Let me say something. Liberia has been the victim of some of the worst propaganda, hate propaganda I've ever seen. And if you really
I
want to
yeah,
know,
agree with you.
if you really want to know what happened in Liberia, you have to read the words of Liberians. The thing that is frustrating for me is that this isn't like ancient Dahomey, right? Where you've got people who couldn't read and write. So the conquerors have to come and tell their story. In the case of Liberia, Blyden wrote so many books. Why are we not reading Edward Wilmot Blyden's own words? He's got so many
I would say
books.
that's ignorance on my part, knowing that
And then
I could go buy books about Blyden.
right. And you go buy a white guy's book about Liberia, about Blyden, when Blyden wrote his own books
I
about
took it with a
Blyden.
grain of salt that he was white and he white about Liberia. I
I
took it with a grain of salt. I took it
what
with a
I'm
grain of
saying,
salt.
brother, is that if we really want to know what was in the mind of the people who established the country, we should read their own words. They wrote stuff down. We don't need white interpreters or modern day revisionists. We need to go. What I do and what I present on the Liberian History Channel is the words of the people who did the stuff, right? So I read J.J. Roberts' thinking. And when J.J. Roberts goes to Barbados and he says to the Barbados Colonization Society, the people who were leaving Barbados trying to go to Freetown initially, and he says to them, I have done more to snuff out the slave trade on the west coast of Africa than all the natives of Europe combined. He said this to them in Barbados. I don't need to read that from someone else. Those were his own words. When I read President Daniel Bashir Warner, in a speech that he gave in his annual speech, his annual address to the legislature, and he talks about the noblemen in the rainforest that have so much to offer us. We need to connect with them and learn from them. When you hear Daniel Bashir Warner, those are his words. This is what you call primary source documentation. So there's no need to be quoting some culture vulture and bandit that's there to discredit African people. There's no reason to quote them. Our people wrote their own story. They wrote their own books. They wrote their own ideas. They left a blueprint for us to read. We must read their words first before we read anybody else's. It's a disservice to ourselves and it's a disrespect to them. You know, we act like they couldn't read and
I feel
write.
you,
They
Carl.
wrote books.
Yeah.
There's,
I
and
feel you,
then we've
Carl.
gotten
I'm
we
out of
fought to
pocket
get.
for reading the white boy. I'm out of pocket
I'm
for reading
not
the white
saying you
boy
out of pocket
James.
for reading it. I'm saying you out of pocket for not also focusing on the words of the people we're discussing. Why don't we read their own words? You
I
can
don't,
read
but
whatever you want,
I'm
but
just,
don't neglect your own people's work.
yeah, I'm over here. I'm in California, so the first time I ever read a book about Liberia was in like junior college library, and it was like an
Mhm.
old book. Like it had like
Yeah.
fabric covers, like the back snap. When I opened it, it was like old. I mean, the copyrights were like back to like 1960, 1970, and so yeah, so I when I saw a newer book, I jumped to it. But when I saw he put his face on the back cover, I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, and brother, that's
But
the
but a
challenge.
lot of stuff I read, I know that there was a lot of mixed opinions amongst the
Mhm.
repatriates of should it just be us or should we include the indigenous people. He kind
I've
of
never
picked
seen
it,
that
but
anywhere
I
though.
kind
Let me
of saw
see
that he
anywhere.
did kind of like play fast and loose with certain parts, but that's
But
why
what
I
I'm
just brought
saying is
that
that
up.
sticks
With
in
just
your
I wanted
head,
you to talk
brother,
more about the Pan African versus
brother,
the version of Liberia
brother,
that they've been selling to the world.
brother.
brother.
Why is that sticking in your head though?
Yeah, like
That the thing is, that's the danger of reading these people's BS that they write. Why is it sticking in your head? How does it even make sense? Because
Well,
white people came to, let me finish, let me just make this point. Because
okay.
what ends up happening with these white people is they want to project their behavior onto black people.
thank you.
Because they came to America
Yeah.
and committed genocide and committed a massive land grab. When they go to talk about Liberia, they want to project their behavior
It
onto
was a black
Liberians,
version
and
of
it's not
Cowboys
the
and
same.
Indians.
It never happened. There was no land grab. I'm an indigenous woman. We still own and control all of our land. It's the only place on that continent where you see anywhere you go in Liberia beyond that coast. I want to know what African American owns land in Grand Jita. Not one. You know, it's
No,
like
yeah.
cognitive dissonance. How can you say you had people come and do a land grab when most of the indigenous people are present? You're talking about a small immigrant population that mostly is on the coast and up the St. Paul River. There was no land grab. The Constitution protected indigenous land rights. To this day, thanks to the 1847 Constitution, I own land in Liberia. I have indigenous land rights in Liberia. So I don't like when people are talking, I'm like, what country are you talking about? It's not Liberia. All
Yeah,
of those
I'm not
indigenous
saying
people,
there's an apartheid state, even with if they went
but
JJR instead of Biden. I'm saying
nobody was
that
advocating
Liberia
for
would
an
have been
apartheid
bigger
state. When
if
you
they
say
had went the other way.
Brother, brother.
people, hold on, Jabari. When you say that people were departed going this way or going, there was never a single person that went to Africa to Liberia specifically and tried to segregate themselves from indigenous people. I challenge anyone to show me any evidence of that.
Well,
Where any
Carl, I'm not
African
saying that they
American, a descendant of
segregated
the Caribbean,
themselves.
wrote a single line that even supports that narrative.
I
I'm not
just
It
saying they
doesn't
went there to
exist.
segregate themselves. I'm saying that they didn't go there with the intention of we're going to build something. The people that already live there, we're going to pull them into it, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger
brother,
and bigger.
brother,
That's not
brother.
true, though. That's not true. Show me
Brother,
evidence of that.
can I just ask a question, Carl? So, brother Blue South, I have a question. So,
Yeah.
when these African immigrants came to the west coast of Africa, there were still slave trading and slave factories going on, and you had African leaders who blatantly said straight up that if they come here and they abolish slavery, it's going to be a threat, and we're going to have to militarily attack. In
Yeah.
that particular situation, how do you advise that those people integrate into those societies or build something up for them?
That's not even the question,
They
Jabari.
have to
That
integrate into, well, I mean, the fact that Liberia represents the antithesis to that, then I believe that you have to integrate into a society where you're raising your boys to be warriors that have to go over here and snuff this out. The only difference is
listen.
that they didn't stay there and occupy those places where slavery is going on.
So,
They just
so,
snuffed it out.
so in the meantime, what are they supposed to do? So in the
So let
meantime, what are
me.
they supposed to
I
do?
There ain't
understand where
enough
the
people for
disconnect
them
is.
to go over there and snuff it out and set up an outpost and we control this. This is the part of Liberia because, like I said, it'd be from
That's
the
exactly what
Gambia River
happened,
to the
though.
Niger
That's
Delta.
exactly what happened, though. That's exactly what happened. What you're saying, they didn't have enough people to do. That's exactly what happened. Every single town on that coast that you see, Harper, Robertsport, Monrovia, all
San
those
Pedro.
towns, it, well, San Pedro, yes, but that's in Ivory Coast today, right?
Yeah.
Completely different. Well, we're really talking about Harper westward on the coast. So from Harper to all of those towns along the coast were former slave factories, and they ended up being settled by immigrants once Roberts snuffed out the slave trade. Treaties were
I didn't
signed,
know that.
and those coastal towns are built literally on top of slave factories.
Is
So
that
this
part of the reason why
idea,
there were the Grebo Wars in Maryland? Did they have to do with
no,
the slave trade?
no, let's focus on one thing at a time and one time period at a time. And no,
Okay.
that is not why there were Grable Wars. Okay, snuffing out the slave trade is a different topic. It's a different time period. There were no Grable Wars when Roberts was there. Roberts was about busting up slave factories. We're talking about Joseph
Yeah.
Jenkins Roberts here. We're talking about
Yeah.
before 1847 here. Okay, there's no Liberia yet.
Yeah.
This is during the period of separate
The
colonies on the
Commonwealth.
coast. Even a little bit before the Commonwealth, definitely, especially Roberts snuffing out during the period of the Commonwealth, there was still some stuff going on, but really even pre-Commonwealth, right? So you've got, because Maryland is separate, even after
Yeah.
independence.
It wasn't part of Liberia.
Robertsport
It's
was
its own
never part
country.
of Robertsport was not part of Liberia in 1847.
Robertsport. Okay.
No, there was nobody representing Cape Mount. It was Montserrat, Bassa, and Sino that signed the Declaration of Independence in 1847.
Okay.
So people need to put time and understand time frame when they're talking about history. Everything didn't happen all at once, right? There's a progression. So
Yeah.
that's a separate issue. So the places where you see these towns, Buchanan, all these places are built on top of slave factories. This is a fact. Edina, Marshall, all of these towns are built on top of slave factories. That's where the land came from for them to settle.
Okay.
So that's a separate issue. Grable War is being instigated after the Berlin Conference for obvious reasons. That's a separate issue. The other
Were these
thing that
places
needs to be
contested for
understood,
the way Monrovia was contested for?
Excuse me?
Were these places contested for, given that they were used for that purpose, the way Monrovia was? As far as there were
When
battles
we say he
afterward,
snuffed
there were
out the
disputes
slave trade, he
afterward.
did it with violence. He did it with violence. Of course. If you're selling human beings, they're snuffed out with violence. And the people who were liberated are now incorporated into Liberia. Even Grand Cape Mount, when Grand Cape Mount joined and the Massaquoi clan was defeated by the British in Sierra Leone, Liberia helped to defend them up to the Makano River, or the Mano River as we call it. They said, we will defend you, but your slaves will become our citizens. You are no longer king. Your slaves will now become Liberian citizens. There's no slavery practice. So when the Cape Mountaineans, the Vai of the clan of, the kingdom of King Massaquoi, when he joined Liberia, he gave up his crown and gave up his slaves. His slaves became Liberians. These people owned human beings. Our people owned human beings. And when you have a society and a culture and strangers come and they're in the vicinity and you have power and you have slaves, you're not going to voluntarily give up to go become a westernized Negro on the coast. You're not going to do that. So this idea that they somehow kept people out as if they were just waiting for Black Americans to come give them their citizenship, as if they weren't already citizens of their own countries, is just absurd. These people
Okay,
already
that sounds
existed
correct.
in their political networks, right? They already had countries
Yeah.
and loyalties to kings. They already had countries and loyalties to kings. So it's not a situation where you're coming in and you're saying, "Hi, I'm Joseph Jenkins Roberts. I'm starting a country. Would you booga boogas like to join me in my country?" They weren't booga boogas. They had their own countries. So what forced my people and many others to become Liberian? We had a choice after the Berlin Conference, because autonomy was no longer an option for Africans, because these Europeans had consolidated power. Once the Mori Ture fell, you have many Madinka and other Mendi ethnic groups descending into the rainforest and coming into the known Liberian territory, seeking refuge from the French. And they're making a
So
choice because
when I gave
sovereignty,
my description, go ahead.
when you're descending from the coast and you no longer have sovereignty as an option, you either become a subject of the French or you become free. Liberia meant freedom.
So was I incorrect in associating that there was a divergence between JJR and Blyden, or
Yes.
was it more that Liberia represented this thing and they weren't able to capitalize on it and undermine these other places going forward? Because with that mindset, there's no reason why the people in what ended up Sierra Leone end up becoming Galena, Sierra Leone itself, going forward,
Because
going to
you
these
have
other
the
places
British
that are
after the
adjacent to
Berlin
Liberia.
Conference. After the Berlin Conference, they carved up Africa.
But they had to put troops on the ground to enforce whatever they claimed, though. And Liberia had a claim to be able to say, like, we're an
And
oppositional group to
Liberia
whatever
fought
these Europeans
numbers of
represent.
wars. So now you're getting into the Grable Wars and the Bandi Wars and all of these wars, right? Because what happens is the
Yeah.
British put these boundaries, the French put these boundaries. And guess what? There are Grable people on the French side of the boundary.
That's what I was saying initially, where it's just like the ethnic groups on the side of on the Liberian side of the border, they're represented on the other side of the border in Cote d'Ivoire, in Guinea, and Sierra Leone. And if they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing,
the Grable Wars were fought by people who mostly by people who were being coerced by the British, or not even coerced, who felt that they wanted to be British subjects as opposed to being Liberians.
The British or the French?
British. They planted
the
British. Yes. They planted the British Jack on Liberian soil. This is one of the conflicts. Planted the British Jack on Liberian soil. The British wanted to take all of Liberia. And they planted the British Jack.
French.
They did not plant the British Jack on French soil. The British wanted Liberia. So they planted the British Jack on Liberian soil. The British wanted control of all of Sierra Leone and all of Liberia. So they planted the British Jack at Cape Palmas, because they're not going to plant the British Jack on the place that the French are claiming, because the French are claiming it and they already sat in Berlin and made a decision. Liberia was not at the table at the Berlin Conference. You have to remember this.
Liberia was a pawn in a bigger chessboard, yeah.
Liberia was not at the table at the Berlin Conference. Liberia did not believe in carving up Africa. Liberia believed in African sovereignty. So when they made their decision to carve up the continent, the British wanted Liberia. They started instigating these wars. Are you going to let me get to the point, or do you have another question?
Yeah, I want to ask you a question, but yeah, continue.
Go ahead and ask the question.
What is your point?
I'm just trying to give him like this background, and he keeps interrupting with this stuff. So I want to know what he's got to ask. Like, he didn't even know that the British were trying to take over Liberia. That's crazy. Like, how Do you read a
I'm
book
about to
about
say,
Liberian
bro,
history
like
and not
what?
know that?
Honest, like what is your point, bro? Like what is your point?
Well, Ka's making the point that the British planted the flag and they
No,
were
the
trying to
Greybows planted the British flag. Greybows
the
planted the
Grable
British
planted it.
flag.
Okay, big
The
difference.
Greybows planted the British Jack in Cape Palmas. And
And wasn't there something
then
similar with
some
the
of the
crew?
Greybows and crew and others wanted to defend Liberia and their sovereignty, and others wanted to be British. So most of that war was between Greybows and Greybows.
Okay, because there weren't
Greybow people
enough Americans
defending
to ever be
Greybow.
like a factor in them fighting over some stuff.
If Greybow people had not defended Liberia against the British that other Greybow people were fighting a proxy war for, we would not have Maryland, would not be part of Liberia.
It'd probably be more than
So,
Maryland, though. It'd probably be Sino County be over there too.
well, it was really fought in Maryland, what is now in Maryland, right? So you had
Yeah,
these flare-ups, but we have to also remember that just because all these people are called Greybow, that they don't have the same mind. And that the ones who
yeah.
were fighting the proxy war for the British were armed by the British, and they slaughtered Greybows who were defending Liberia.
So Jabari asked me earlier what was my point, and I want to go to we spoke on earlier, like some alternative history, like what if type of Liberia type of stuff. And my thing was, so for Liberia, like let's say hypothetical Liberia expanded from the Gambia River to the Niger Delta, which like I was saying that the reason why Liberia didn't go that way was because Liberia in part embraced JJR over Blyden.
No,
You're
it's
saying
because
that
there were
you're
people
saying that
there and they
JJR
were
had a Pan Africanist
sovereign.
view.
Brother, I'm gonna say
Bruh,
this. I'm gonna say this one last
this is,
time.
I gotta go, y'all. I
Yeah,
gotta go. This is
No, I'm
annoying as
not. I'm
hell.
not trying to
I'm
be contentious. I'm trying to say why didn't it
like
go that way? Which view did it need to
Why?
be
Let
for
me
it to
ask
go
you
that
something.
way?
Let me ask you something, brother. Let me ask you something. You have to realize that there were human beings there.
Yeah.
Why in the hell would they be sitting there like as if they didn't have their own countries? How would Liberia have expanded there? How does that happen?
Well, okay.
mind you, without using
Will you
military
listen to my
force.
response?
Yeah,
Will
I'm
you listen to my
listening.
response?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm saying that we're talking about Black people who come from the West, who come from, they're indoctrinated with traditions of Napoleon and Alexander. So I'm saying, so like, why wouldn't Black people who come from the United States where they're slaves and they go to West Africa, why wouldn't they want a state that spans the vastest territorial area that they can span? And hold on, brother, hold on,
I don't think.
But
Listen, but
I'm saying though, if the American Liberians fought wars with the Grebos and they fought wars with these other people that were trading slaves, why wouldn't they just want to control everything between the Gambia and the Niger Delta?
because they would have gotten wiped. They
would
have gotten wiped out. They would have gotten wiped out. Jabari, hang on one second. Hold on.
Okay, well,
What
y'all
this
gonna
is
listen
coming?
to me,
Hold
or y'all
on.
just gonna
Hold on. There's two things. One, you do not have a slightest bit of respect for or recognition of who the people that were living in places like Gambia and these places.
I'm not talking about disrespect. I'm not talking about
no, but it is because you.
People.
Let me finish, brother. You could come in. I'll pause. I'll let you talk.
All right.
One thing is, there's no regard for the humanity of African people. We see African people like a bunch of boogas. That's the first problem. Only a person who doesn't recognize how incredibly powerful these people were would make such a statement. The second thing is, it is a complete falsehood that anyone went to Liberia with the mindset of a Napoleon. That is a lie. They wrote what they thought and what their plans were. Not a single one of them went there with an imperialistic mindset. That's why I said, you cannot produce a single line, a single sentence spoken by any of them that talked about conquest. So you can't make an analysis of history based on a complete false narrative. a narrative that you had a Napoleonic complex of African Americans, which is just a lie. So disabuse your mind from that, or you won't understand history.
I
The
wasn't
second thing
saying
is,
that, by the way.
you just said it came from this mindset of Napoleon. That's not true. These people wrote
I
their
didn't say
thoughts
it came
down.
from that. I'm saying that
I
Liberia
am
will
done.
produce
You
that
know what?
in
So
realistic.
the second thing is, brother, so that's not true. Whatever it is you're thinking isn't true. They didn't go there to overcome or overthrow anybody but slavery. They were abolitionists. That's a fact. The second thing is, the people that you think they could have just easily moved into, the Europeans fought like hell against these people just to control the territory once they divided it. So Moray Toure rose up and defeated them and kept them at bay for decades, for over 2 decades. So it's not like people were just sitting around. I mean, what army did they have that was more powerful than the French and the British that couldn't keep these people under control? You talking about a group of African Americans who have been isolated economically and militarily by Europe. They're supposed to do an expanse, and you're saying the reason they didn't is because Blyden and Roberts didn't agree. You're not understanding history. Then you don't know what was happening.
You're misrepresenting. I don't know if you heard me and Jabari, the comments I made to Jabari earlier, but you're misrepresented. I was saying that earlier, if Lincoln had what's it called, basically deported all the free blacks after the Civil War, he said it would have been a different country. I said, and I asked him, do you think it would have spanned from the Gambia River to the Niger Delta? He said yes, because you're sending basically
I disagree
4
with both
million
of y'all.
people
I disagree
over
with both
to
of y'all.
like.
I disagree with both of y'all. It
But
would
what
not
I'm
have
saying,
expanded that
okay,
far.
but hold on, Ka.
Mhm.
I'm saying that if you sent everybody over there, and mind you, this is a time with smaller populations, and the idea was to take the ideas of Liberia and you spread them wherever. We couldn't put everybody in, between Cape Mound and Maserado, or
I mean,
what Cape
African
Palmas. We couldn't
Americans
put
went to Sierra
everybody over
Leone.
there.
African Americans went to Nigeria. African Americans did go
Yeah,
and settle down
but
there.
I'm just saying to have them all in one cohesive state, one kind of loose state that controlled all of that, and then you push into the interior, you would need something like that. I'm saying that if Lincoln
Can I
had
ask you a
did that,
question?
you
Can
would
I
have
ask you a
had
question?
something similar
Why
to
didn't
that.
the
You would
African
have had a
Americans in
Liberian
Sierra
Napoleon.
Leone? Let me ask you a question. Why didn't the African Americans in Sierra Leone join Liberia?
Because they were like a generation different than them.
How?
Because they went over to Sierra Leone back in like the late 1700s, early, like way before Liberia was ever founded, and they
So
were only in Freetown. They weren't all over the place.
Listen, there were still people going to Sierra Leone in the 1800s.
They were going to Freetown, not Sierra Leone. They were going to Freetown.
They were going to all of those settlements up and down the coast of Sierra Leone. Remember,
which are clustered
Kizzleton
around
was there.
Freetown.
You had recaptured Africans going to Kizzleton, to Plantain Islands. You had people. It wasn't only Freetown. Why didn't all of those places join Liberia? The whole coast was westernized. Why didn't they all join Liberia?
The British.
You know why
I don't
they
think
didn't join
Liberia gave them a reason to want to join.
No, it's because the territory was owned and controlled by the British. That's why.
Which is it's more of a threat to face down the British in terms of arms than it is to face down the Kru nation or the Grebo nation or whatever indigenous group.
I don't think you want to understand. I think you want to see. That's the thing. Beware of a single narrative.
Well, you're talking about fighting the British who just like lost to the American state, the American colony. Go ahead, Jabari. Go ahead.
Brother. And then I'm about to cap it. The reason why I said that it would have been larger was primarily through unification, not through force. I never said
the Grebos didn't want to join through unification. They had to force them to join.
That's not true. The Grebos did want to join through unification, and that's why they won. Their traitor-ass brothers. That's why they won against them, because most of the Grebos that are in Liberia, their forefathers fought to be Liberian. That's the part you're missing.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying if you spread that same concept across West Africa, how many people do you have to fight?
You want to paint the natives as some kind of victims who history happened to.
I'm not,
and that's not true.
Victims.
I'm a Ma woman. I'm a Ma woman, right? My forefathers. The reason you've got that Iron Mountain sticking up into Guinea, is because my forefathers fought the French and didn't want to be French. That's why we're in Liberia. Nobody forced Liberia upon us. It was a choice between being subjugated by the French or maintaining some semblance of sovereignty in Liberia. They made the right choice. Nobody forced that upon us.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
So my point is, don't say that they fought the Grebels. The Grebels had a conflict with other Grebels about if they were going to be Liberian or they were going to be British. And the Grebels who fought for Liberia are the ones who won. Essentially, that's what it is.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It sounds like there were people that wanted to be a part of the Liberian project. I'm saying if they spanned out the project.
What?
I'm saying if they spanned out the project to go beyond between Cape Mountain and Cape Palmas, so they spanned it all the way out from the Gambia all the way to the Niger Delta.
So it
would have been the same thing, right? It would have been people that joined. It would have been people that resisted, right?
This was not. This was. Oh no.
He thinks they should have fought the Berlin Conference. I don't get it. Like, what are you saying? They should have fought against the Berlin Conference and waged a war against Europe. I mean, they could have done that. We probably would have. I probably wouldn't be here talking to you. My forefathers would have probably died. But yeah, I mean, they could have done that. They could have fought the Berlin Conference.
I told him my point was through unity, because again, those African Americans dreamed of what? They dreamed of revitalizing, connecting, and unifying with their brothers. That's why I said it would have extended. I didn't say through brute force that they were just going to go.
Listen, Jabari, we're having a weird conversation. First of all, we're talking about some fantasy island stuff that never happened and couldn't have happened. The second thing is, after the Berlin Conference, African sovereignty ceased to exist everywhere except Liberia and Ethiopia. So the wars are not being fought with Africans, they're being fought against European powers, really.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having a weird hypothetical conversation that is just not even healthy, because it makes no sense. You can't expand into British territory. They sat at a table that carved out the continent of Africa, and they were trying to even take Liberia's sovereignty away as well. Liberia was fighting to hold on to the little bit of land that she had. Mm-hmm. And if not for indigenous people, Liberia would have been freaking taken away easily.
Yep.
It wasn't just African Americans that defended Liberia's sovereignty. It was our people. Liberia exists because of people like my great-great-grandfather. So we can't just sit here and make it look like, oh, well, they were isolated. We cannot talk about the history of West Africa without talking about the Berlin Conference in the 1880s. Mm-hmm. It was impossible. The scramble for Africa began before the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference was an agreement of solidarity that we're not going to fight each other for territory anymore. But even before the Berlin Conference, they were fighting for signing forced treaties with Africans. The Europeans were doing that all around Liberia, which is why the 1847 Constitution said you can't buy land in this territory. You got to be Black to be a citizen. You got to be a citizen to own land. It was because of the European land grab that they passed those laws. And so once you solidify the Berlin Conference, there's no option of expansion anymore. It's about fighting to hold on to the little bit that is existing. So this weird hypothetical conversation about moving west it was impossible. Those people were still trying to hold on to their territories from the British and the French. So what are we even talking about? Something that never happened, that was not even an option. Mm-hmm. It's weird. The fact of the matter is, Liberia exists as a country, not because of only the will of the African Americans, but by the time the Berlin Conference happened, if indigenous people had not fought for Liberia, Liberia would not exist.
Yep.
If indigenous people did not join the Republic to defend territory, Liberia would not exist. I would be speaking French. I'd be a Guinean. My husband would be a Sierra Leonean. You know, my little mentee trust, he would be an Ivorian. We would have been split, and that would have been the end of story. So the narrative and all these hypotheticals, the reality is we didn't have any options after the Berlin Conference. And the so-called indigenous, we saw the Grabos, the Grabos. The Grabos were fighting Grabos, and it was Grabos that defended Liberia, and it's Grabos that kept Maryland as part of Liberia. Don't let anybody fool you. It is Grabos who defended Liberia. It's Crew people who defended Liberia. It's Madingos and Gios and Manu and Loma and Kisi and Bandi. The reason you even have Bopolu in Liberia and not in Sierra Leone is because of Bandi warriors and Madingo warriors defending the country. This idea that we're some kind of booga boogas that history happened to is a lie. Disabuse your mind of that. It's a racist lie too. That only the people who are exposed to white people are the ones who were able to defend territory. That's nonsense.
Brother, I get it, but bro, that's alt history. That's alternative history that never happened. I just gave a scenario what I think was going to happen. That didn't happen, brother. That's what it is. It's an alternative history. It's what if it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. It wasn't even possible. It's not. It doesn't even. It's like saying, what if aliens came from outer space and gave us all superpowers? Why are we having that conversation? How does that have anything to do with history? It has nothing to do with history. It's just make-believe fantasy conversation that's not productive and doesn't explain anything. The fact of the matter is, there was a Berlin Conference. Let's start there. Understand that happened. Now we can't be speculating about what if, unicorns were flying over Cape Mesurado in 1847. It's got nothing to do with reality. And I notice we do this a lot as Black people. To avoid what actually happened, we start fantasizing. Because maybe the reality is too painful. I don't know.
No, that's the reality, because again, so this whole started was he asking me, well, what if Lincoln, deported all Black people from Africa? I'm like, okay,
it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Right.
Before we start talking about fantasy, let's talk about what actually happened. Let's talk about what actually happened. We have to live in reality.
We're not saying this man saying y'all making it seem like I said Liberia conquered the world. No, we're not saying that. But you made this like a Roberts and Blyden divide when there wasn't.
Roberts and Blyden were in the same party. Blyden was a Republican, like Roberts. They were in the same political party. Joseph Jenkins Roberts was the reason Blyden. First of all, before Blyden even went to Liberia, Roberts and Stephen Allen Benson especially were already working with Madingo traders and getting documents and letters from these people and having them translated. Blyden came and learned that from them. It was Stephen Allen Benson really that was pushing this whole thing. So again, we're having a conversation based on fantasy and assumptions instead of what actually happened. He wants so bad to believe there was this conflict between Blyden and Roberts that didn't exist. And that's one of the things. It's like, because I just have to, this fantasy in my head, it has to be real. It's such an interesting story, but it's not real. I don't care how much you try to hang on to it. It didn't happen. You can't have a conviction about something that didn't happen.
Brother, we spent literally 20 to 30 minutes trying to get to the point of what you were trying to say. And she
wants us to indulge his fantasy discussion, and I don't have the ability to do that, brother. All love and respect due to you. I'm glad you're interested in this topic. but it is not productive to talk about fantasy as it relates to history. We have to understand what is real and what is not real. We can't talk about imagined scenarios when we have the actual scenarios documented. What's the point of that?
And brother, again, like I said, all we said, you could have just left that as she told you specifically Blyden and Roberts. We could have kept it at that, and that's it. We made 20, 30 minutes of unnecessary conversation. She broke down specifically a little what Blyden and Roberts were. And you can say, okay, that's it. Okay, that makes sense. And then move on.
But we got to hold on to our imaginary history. We can't do that. We can't afford to do that as a people.
That's all I'm saying. We're not here to I'm not saying you were disingenuous or none of that. We're not saying that, but what we're saying is that turned into a conversation longer than what it needed to be. You could have just simply said Blyden versus Roberts. Okay, these are the two differences, and move on. Instead, we just spent 30 minutes on this and what came out of it exactly.
But I'm actually glad that he brought it up, because I don't think he's the only one that thinks this way. I just think that he's misinterpreting, what we're saying as, taking it too personal. It's not about you. It's about the narrative. It's about the narrative. It's incorrect. That's all. The narrative is incorrect. Mm-hmm. So I don't want you to think this is a personal attack on your idea.
I'm about to say. That's why I was like,
yeah. But it's been peace, you guys. I appreciate the opportunity, and I want us to try to steer away from hypothetical stuff. Before we talk about hypothetical situations, let's talk about what actually happened. What's actually written? What did these guys actually say? Mm-hmm. Once we understand that, and we want to talk about hypothetical fantasy, no problem. But we need to first know what actually happened and not confuse ourselves with conversations about things that don't exist.
I don't know what any of that was all about.
It was about us talking about reality and other people talking about not so reality.
I don't know what it is. You notice this pattern, Jabari, where the conversation gets derailed into something else. It's like we were talking about one thing and then it just got derailed into something else. And I'm really wondering, what is the purpose of people doing that? Because I don't want to be presumptuous, because I do have a quick trigger finger, and I'm trying to control it so I don't just make everybody out to be bad faith. But I really want to know, what was that all about?
Mm-hmm.
What was that all about?
Do you think people know that they're doing that? Or do you think it's that
personally?
I don't think it's deliberate. I think people have been so programmed. When you've been fed a narrative, it's difficult to get past it. It's difficult to let it go. If you've been told that these African Americans went and enslaved the natives, to see King Momoru as a powerful sovereign is difficult. When you've been raised in the realm of white supremacy, it's difficult to understand that Samori Toure and King Momoru and these people were powerful. You think of them as objects of history. That's what's going on. You're looking at African Americans because of their proximity to Europeans. They came with the Napoleonic concept, as if Africans didn't practice imperialism.
Thank you.
It's just weird. It's a weird conversation. It's because of the way that people are miseducated to think about themselves.
And Hollow. Like I said, I'll admit, we asked this. We were having this conversation. I said yes. Did I believe, based on the hypothetical? Again, it was a small hypothetical, but I kept it at a bare minimum. You asked me a question. What was the hypothetical? I said yes. Do I think that if Lincoln happened? Yes. And I kept it simple and moved on. I didn't harp on it too much. That was my biggest issue. Was harping on it for 20, 30 minutes instead of saying, listen. Yes, I said that if Lincoln sent all African Americans back to Liberia, I think that Liberia and West Africa would have been different. That's what I think.
Don't let people suck you into them conversations, brother.
Like that's
Don't
it.
let-
I said yes.
yeah.
I said West Africa would probably be different. Through unity, maybe we stop the Berlin Conference. But again, who knows?
Let's see, but what I'm questioning is why is that even being brought up? Like, what is the purpose of that? And then the pattern afterwards, if you notice, the pattern afterwards is victim. Now you're the victim. Oh God, I didn't get a chance. You know, it just seems like a pattern to me.
Of course it is, brother. Of course it's a pattern.
That went longer than what we anticipated, Hollow.
And I'm still like what the hell, man? What was that about? Because I was sitting up there, I was trying to figure out, okay, there's some contention here, but what is it? And I still haven't figured that out.
It's trying to prove that a group of Negroes came from America and civilized the savages in Africa. That's what it is. That's a narrative that's got to be held onto by any means necessary.
Wow.
Because there's no way there were powerful Africans on the ground. Why didn't they just spread all over Africa and just take over the booga boogas? You know, that's the mindset.
I said, I'm like, okay, through unity. He says, why a free society of Liberia? Where is it instead of all of West Africa?
Why did you ask? Listen, before we answer any other questions, why are we answering these questions? Where is this going?
What was the
I'm not,
question
you know what?
again?
I'm not just gonna. It's pointless to just ask miscellaneous questions. Where are you
But
going with these
question you
points?
even asked? I didn't hear what Jabari said. I want to
This man
laugh.
said, why a free society of Liberia? Where is it instead of all West Africa?
Why is that asked? Why is that being asked? Is that insane for me to ask that?
Because they think that West Africa was populated by a bunch of booga boogas, Mark. Only a person who thinks that the West African indigenous people were butt naked savages would even ask that question. The context of the question is so white supremacist, it's not even funny. It's a complete denigration of African people. Why would you even think to pose such a question? A more rational hypothetical question would be, why didn't King Mumu and them snuff out all the Liberians? Because that was a more likely scenario. I mean, unless you're going to believe the Matilda Newport story with the cannon, which is BS.
We agree, but the point that we were saying is like, what was like that line of questioning? That's all.
Now you see that confuses me even more.
Like,
the line of questioning is about
Jesus
upholding
Christ.
the white supremacist narrative. That's what it's about.
I'm gonna go with that, Carl. I'm gonna go with that.
You guys are deviating from the white supremacy narrative. It can't be. It's making me uncomfortable.
listen, on that, at least we agree on that.
I'm gonna keep my thoughts to myself. I'm trying to be positive.
I mean, listen, like I said, the point, like I said, it was just the line of questioning. Like the last two comments, yes, we agree on that. We agree, but like the line of questioning that we spent 20 and 30 minutes on, that was our concern. Like, because like, what was the point you were trying to get to? That's why I was asking, what was the point of what you were trying to say? It wasn't to be condescending or denigrating. It was simply asking, what is your point? What are you trying to say? If what you said in the last two statements is true, yes, that is correct. You are right. If that was your point, you're correct.
What was his point?
That could not have been the point because it wouldn't have taken 30 minutes.
No, his point was trying to not let go of the white supremacist narrative that there were a bunch of booga boogas on the west coast of Africa. Not understanding history.
See, this solidifies what I've always been saying about everybody is on this kumbaya. We got to get along with everybody. Or we all want the same thing. I keep hearing that. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Classic.
How do we all want the same thing when we just spent 30 minutes? So apparently we're on the same page, but then we had a 30-minute conversation of contention to all go around to be an argument. Well, yeah, you know, like Liberia is edgy, whatever. What was that about? It just boggles my mind that we cannot get on. If we're on the same page, then let's stay on the same page. Why are we going off route?
Brother, this was the issue. This man said the Sokoto Empire didn't resist the French. We're not talking about the Sokoto Empire.
Did you kick him out?
Yes.
Okay, well, I can't speak to that, bro.
He said what didn't so what? So what? What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Nothing.
Yeah, they aren't trying to understand what I'm saying. I would counter with, you're not explaining what you're trying, the point that you're trying to make. You're just throwing out, it's like this psychology major stuff. You're throwing out points that have no overall main thesis.
Pan-Africanism comes from the blacks on the West. What?
So you know what happens when people have
Jesus
their paradigm,
Christ.
when people have their paradigm challenged. What happens when people have their paradigm challenged? It's an affirmation of facts that they already know. So now that we've let them know that West Africa wasn't populated by booga boogas that were powerless and ignorant or whatever, they can't argue that. But you know what? I do know that 1 + 1 = 2. Yes, you're right. It does equal 2.
But
well, I might have been wrong about that, but these people didn't resist the French.
Hold on, wait a minute though. This is what we're talking about. What are you trying to say, brother? You say on one hand, Pan-Africanism comes from blacks on the West, and from the West, from the diaspora. But then you say these same black people have a Napoleon mindset. So which one is it?
He wants to be right about something. He's absolutely right. Pan-Africanism is a response to white imperialism, period.
Correct.
It is not born of sovereign Africans. It's born of oppressed people. It is a response to being placed into the same oppressive situation with people who you would have otherwise not been connected to in any way, shape, or form. African people did not invent racial categorizations. Africa is a diverse place with many cultures and languages, people who saw themselves as different people. You don't become one until you're all put under the same oppression. So clearly, Pan-Africanism is born of that. That's not even something to even argue or even discuss. It's obvious.
Brother. He said, all I asked was, why wasn't Liberia a Pan-African experiment? It was a Pan-African experience. That's what we're trying to say to you. It was a Pan-African experiment.
Then we got.
How was it not? How was it not? Don't even tell him it was. Ask him how it wasn't.
Now we got the victimhood. I was attacked. Oh, Lord have mercy. Yo. I don't think that. I think this has been exhausted long enough. I think we need to wrap it up. Let everybody get on with their day.
All I'm saying, brother, all I'm saying is, and all we were just simply saying is that, listen, if that was the case, if that was the question, you could have just asked that simple question.
How is Liberia not a Pan-African experiment? How is it not? How is an asylum? Read the Declaration of Independence for Liberia. That's all you need to read, and you will not even ask that question. Read the Liberian Declaration of Independence, and you won't even have to ask that question.
Nah, Blue Socks, you tripping.
Read the Declaration of Independence, and you won't even have to ask that question.
You're tripping. You're the one that threw the turd into the punch bowl.
That's why it was established. Liberia is a Pan-African nation, if ever there was one. There can't be a more perfect Pan-African nation. Who's not represented there in the leadership of that country?
So the point was to challenge Kaur, to have a battle of wits with her. That's what the point was?
Oh, is that what he's saying? I'm not reading the comments. Good for him.
Oh, wow. So that was productive.
What did he say?
He said, Kaur got talking points. I can't talk to y'all. Y'all tripping. Call God talking to me.
So this was this was a Mortal Kombat we experienced.
I guess so, brother. I'm not trying to
Okay.
combat anybody. I'm trying to
All righty.
defend my country, and I'm trying
I'm
to
about
Okay.
to
defend the
say.
founders of my country.
Okay. Since you want to be like this, you know what? Here's what. No, never mind.
No, let's end this, man. I don't want to engage anymore. This is stupid.
You can you can. I got time for days. I got time
Well,
for days.
all right.
I know you got it,
I'll
I
brother.
let
got
you
time for
deal with
days to
this.
handle this. I got time for
No
days.
more, no more, no more free. Listen, you cannot argue with people from a perspective of their misunderstanding. They should, instead of arguing, what people are supposed to do is to seek to learn. You can't put yourself in a position to debate with people who have spent decades studying a subject matter that you barely have touched upon. It's not a smart way to engage anything as a thinking person. I'm not going to sit here and argue with someone about Chinese history when I've only read peripheral articles and only how China relates to Africa. I don't know the depths of Chinese history, their dynasties. So if someone comes on here and talks, I'm not going to argue with them and say, well, I have this misunderstanding and I want you to disprove it in my head. It makes no sense. People need to learn when to take notes and when to speak.
Exactly.
And the tolerance
Said,
that you have, Jabari, I don't have it. Because
Neither
I've
do I.
earned the position to lecture about this subject.
yep.
And you have every right to challenge me, but you should challenge me from a position of fact, not hypothetical fantasy. You can't put your fantasy against things that are actually studied and real. If you want to have a debate, let's talk about things that we both have studied in common, and then you bring your perspective on that tangible information. But you can't have someone talking to you about tangible facts and you talking about fantasy and you think it's a debate. It's not a debate. That's
No,
not how you debate.
no, died. I'm not like that, brother. But yeah, all I would say is, bro, it's just simple, bro. Like, keep your point clear and concise.
There's no point, Jabari. He wants to put his fantasy on the level of information that we have. It's not, doesn't work that way. You should
And
be
this,
coming with an open mind to understand. You should be asking for references so you can go read things on your own. If you mean well, that's what you would do, because you, by your own admittance, have not studied the subject. So why are we debating? What you
yeah,
should
this,
rather do is ask us for, okay, great, can you share some primary source documents with me so I can think for myself and not have to make up stuff in my imagination? That's what should be happening.
yeah, the spirit in which you were engaging wasn't I wasn't sensing that it was a trying to
I'm about to
learn
say the way
and
you was
gain
projecting.
more
You can't read
information.
some book by some white guy and come and try to use that as a basis for your understanding and then call it a debate. What are we doing?
And the way, and like I said, the way that you were coming off was just straight up like, yeah, just
He
here to
wasn't
talk.
coming off as nothing to me. I didn't take offense to how he was coming off. I just understand the behavior. And it's not only him, that's how our people behave. It's like it's like a psychological issue. Like, instead of accepting the fact that you know very little about the subject so that you can learn more, you want to hold on to the misinformation. It's more important to you to defend misinformation instead of
Okay.
saying, where did you get the information that you have? Can you share stuff with me? Great. Yes, I can. Here's some speeches by Roberts that you can refer to. And here's some books that Blyden published that you can get online on Amazon for very cheap. Instead of
But
doing that, we're going to have this argument because
yeah,
he wants to hold on to some white guy's publication. For what?
what we, y'all, yeah.
Can y'all
But
hear me?
I will say this, brother. I'm not reading your comments. I don't know why you left, but go to Amazon
Yeah.
and look up Edward Wilmot Blyden. There's a lot of publications that you can order
I
and
mean,
start to study for yourself.
we can provide you that if you would have been willing to ask that. We could have provided you a
Can
reason.
y'all hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, hold up. You already said what you said. I agree. Yeah, let's end it.
Because this is not good faith, Jabari.
It's not
It's
like
obvious this is not good faith. So then why are we still engaging?
Yeah.
yeah, let's park it.
All right, y'all. It's been
Enjoy the
peace.
rest of your evening.
I'm about to say we
Yeah, I
had
appreciate y'all. And if you do want more information, put your reach out to BAIO and we will get you. There are a lot of stuff that you can see on there.
Mikey came at the last minute. Mikey, no.
What do you say?
No, Mikey just came.
And there we have it. You see that last statement?
What was
hello?
that?
Y'all can hear me?
What's the last statement?
He says, y'all Broly brothers.
No, say no. Don't clean it up. Say exactly what he said.
He said, fuck y'all bully brothers. Like, brother, we got the link. I put the link back in. So you said we kicked you out. I put the link right back in 7 minutes ago. You could have came back in. I put the link back in 7 minutes ago. And you could have came back in.
Well, like they did in Bronx Tale, now you can't come back in.
Oh yeah, y'all can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can let you say one thing. You can say a few comments. Erudite, you can come in. I mean, like I said, like we had this stuff in. Like the link was in.
I was gonna say that if y'all got like a